10 a.m., May 14th, special budget meeting to order. Welcome those who are joining us in the audience, those who may be joining us remotely. As with every meeting, we'll start with the invocation and prayer. I think we're going to need a lot of that today. So we'll go to Councilmember DJ Hare. He's wired up and fired up.
Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to come together on May the 14th to do the business of the city for our first full council budget work session. Lord, open up our hearts and minds. Father, send us some keenness and awareness where cuts can be done, where other avenues of revenue can be received. Lord, let us do the very best we can to help our residents with the funding and the priorities and the objectives that we need to do for this city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move to approve the agenda.
All right, wait a minute. Let's see.
We gotta wait for one more.
Yeah, we had our
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There were 6 when we opened it.
We have 6. He's just in the bathroom.
Davis was here, but I don't know where he went.
I don't know where he went. You can't start.
I don't know, but once it's open, it's legit. All right, so get a motion to approve, and then we'll probably pause, try to give some of our folks a chance to catch up with us.
So move.
Second.
All right, there's a motion to approve the agenda by Councilman Alejandro, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Discussion. All right, Council, I look to you for your votes to approve the agenda. We're using the Sure Systems. All right. Councilman Davis, you with us?
Voting on the
Agenda.
motion to approve the agenda.
All right, motion carries by those present.
Okay.
And, yes, sir. All right, well, we're gonna hold fast a minute. We got, give me 1 second. We got, so I know, McMillan said he wasn't gonna be able to make it. You say Ferguson said?
Ferguson's 5 minutes out. Here he is. He's coming in now.
5 minutes to go. Martin, gotta get you out to bed in the morning.
Jones is in the back.
Jones in the bathroom. All right, so council, we'll give it just a minute. This is a new process for some of us here, and I want to make sure that we started at the beginning. So we'll give, if you can ask for a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes before we go to Councilmember Hare, who's locked and ready this morning.
Turn your mic on.
Good morning, sir. All right, Councilman Hare. Well,
Thank
first,
you.
let me, before you go there, Mr. Manager, as we look at this today, had some of the small group meetings. Just kind of want to lay out a format for today. This will be an introduction of your budget. Council have its input on it, and I guess 5, 2, and 3 are the cost of government. But with that, I'll go to Councilmember Hare, and then Councilmember Hare, after whatever your question or comment is, I want to get to whoever's going to be doing the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, sir. And thank you all. I mean, thank you, Mayor. Thanks, team. Thanks, staff. I sent you all an email a couple of weeks ago when we first had assigned our times for our budget discussions, and I just wanted to start off with the full council just to let you know that It's going to be very, very difficult for me to support any forms and any description that you want to put it in of a tax increase. That was in my email that I sent out, and I just wanted everyone to have a heads up that I sincerely meant that. As I look at page 3, can I go on or do I wait?
No, let's get into the presentation, but hold, hold tight on that. All right, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of council. Good morning. The staff and I are very excited to present to you the recommended budget. After today's presentation, this presentation now becomes the council's budget, and we will be seeking additional guidance from council as you move to fully make it your own, providing policy direction to the staff as to what works for you in the budget, what doesn't work for you in the budget. And as the mayor mentioned, over the subsequent work sessions that we will have for you to fully understand what is in the recommended budget, what is not in the recommended budget, and then working together with each other and with the team, city staff, to identify how we move the city forward together. But I'd like to start by reading briefly the transmittal that's included in your budget, and this is primarily for the people who are listening to our meeting today, and I think it really does a good job of capturing our point in time in the city of Fayetteville. And after I finish that, I'm going to ask staff, Assistant City Manager Jeff Yates, and our Interim Budget and Evaluation Director, Michelle Brooks, and her team to come forward to walk you through a more detailed presentation of what's in the budget, what the drivers were of that budget, and so forth and so on. But I'll start with, again, the introduction. Mayor Colvin and members of council, I'm pleased to present the recommended budget for fiscal year 2027. This budget reflects what we've heard from our residents, city council, our employees, and our community partners. Keep the main thing, protect core services, finish what we've started, and continue making strategic investments that position Fayetteville for an even stronger future. Fayetteville has always been a can-do city. That spirit shows up in the work of our employees, the commitment to our residents, and the leadership of the city council. Even as we face rising costs, growing service demands, and uncertainty beyond our control, our responsibility remains the same: being careful stewards of the public's resources while continuing to deliver the services our community depends on. This recommended budget is built around that responsibility. It supports the city's mission to provide quality and sustainable public services so our communities can thrive and businesses can grow. It maintains essential services, invests in employees, advances the council's priorities, and provides a clear path for continued discussion as council considers the final budget for adoption. It also includes key investments along with recommendations. Funding the investment, we recommend a property tax rate of 45.95 cents. This is one of the lowest rates in the city's history. And the small increase of 1 cent will help us keep services strong and reliable. Public safety investment, we recommend $120 million for public safety, including funding for $76 million for the Fayetteville Police Department, a $2.54 million increase, $42 million for the fire department, which represents a $2.1 million increase, $2.18 million for the Office of Community Safety, which is a slight decrease of $287,000. Mental health response expansion, we recommend adding 2 mental health response units to the Office of Community Safety. These teams will respond to people in crisis and meet growing community needs. Employee compensation increases, we recommend invest in our employees by funding step increases for public safety staff, providing 4% pay raise for all other employees, and increasing the city's 401k contribution by 1% so all employees receive the same level of support. We also recommend a $10 yearly increase to the solid waste fee to help cover higher fuel costs and rising operational costs, but no other fee increases are proposed at this time. These recommendations and the discussion that follows reflect our attempt to balance opportunity with reality and today's needs with tomorrow's possibilities. They maintain the services that citizens rely on, strengthen priority areas such as public safety and community safety, support the employees who deliver city services every day, and preserve flexibility for council discussion during the budget review process. It's also a budget shaped by partnership. The city cannot accomplish its goals alone, whether through neighborhood revitalization, public safety, economic development, affordable housing, infrastructure, or community engagement. Our progress depends on strong relationships with residents, council, employees, community partners, regional institutions, and other levels of government. While this budget requires some difficult choices, it keeps Fayetteville moving forward. It protects services residents rely on, supports the workforce of almost 1,800 employees, and who deliver those services and set the stage for an even greater Fayetteville's future. That is the transmittal letter. I would say, as Jeff comes forward to go into finer detail into the budget, that the expenditures across all funds, the revised budget for FY26 is $324 million. The recommended budget for FY27 is $322 million, which represents a 0.62% decrease in where we are at the moment. And so the team and I have worked really hard to try to push revenues as far as we could with existing revenues, to reduce expenditures as much as we could, while still, again, keeping the main thing, and making sure we take care of employees, take care of our residents, and finish what we've started. And so, as we've discussed in our small group meetings, 1 cent tax rate increase is proposed for our ongoing issues and needs for operations, and we're proposing a 2 cent to also be added for the ongoing capital needs that the community has told us they need, and the council has also expressed a desire to fund in the past. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to dig into the budget a little bit more, understanding that your time is limited. I'll ask Jeff if he can get into the budget some before we take questions. But Mayor's, Council's prerogative how you'd like to proceed.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hewitt. Yes, we'll get Mr. Yates moving. Council, write down your questions, and then we'll stop them periodically to make sure, because we're dealing with numbers, so we'll make sure that we're tracking that. Yes, sir. Mr. Yates.
It was coming from what was just read. So.
All right. You go ahead. You want to hit it?
I'll wait. I'm just saying it was coming from the opening statement of the manager.
Okay. All right. Mr. Yates.
Thank you. Good morning, Council, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to kind of talk you through the city manager's recommended budget. Keeping in mind, this is the culmination of work that really started in September and October, and the work you did at your strategic planning retreat, and the synthesis of all of that, plus everything we've heard over the year from council. For today, what we are going to look at is talking about the manager's recommended budget, the discussion of the cost of government, as well as the housing opportunity bond allocation framework, and the introduction of our transparency and engagement tool. So with that in mind, where we started with the budget is we started with the council priorities, continuing implementing the comprehensive approach to community safety, enhancing economic growth opportunities throughout the city, expanding the housing and neighborhood revitalization and refurbishment efforts with an emphasis on mature neighborhoods and attainable housing, improve and expand transportation, transit, and overall connectivity for residents. In addition, as we worked through our budgetary framework, we wanted to ensure that we are able to continue the work we're doing by focusing on our employees, because they're our most important asset, focusing on maintaining services and commitments. So continuing the services we provide at the level that the community expects them, and then focusing on high value, high impact additions. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But I kind of, as I like to do, I want to just start with the bottom line up front. And I think, Councilman Hare, this is where you were reacting to To continue the services, and I'll have a little more detail about this as we go on, to continue the services the council is asked for and continue to provide those services, the recommended budget includes a 1 cent increase in ad valorem tax rate for operations. This is not for new services. This is just to continue to provide the services we have and maintain our staffing. The only new service that's included in your recommended budget is our two mental health response units. And those are, while they're new services, they were really achieved by swapping out professional services that Office of Community Safety were using for youth activations and whatnot, and reprioritizing that funding to two mental health response units. So the recommended budget with that 1 cent tax increase only represents the core service or the base level of service. To achieve the council's goals for infrastructure, maintaining our infrastructure, including buildings and maintenance of parks and recreation facilities and our public safety, radios, and that infrastructure. We're also recommending 2 cent ad valorem increase on the capital side, okay? So that's a total of 3 cents. Today we're talking about the operations. We talked on the 8th about the capital, and we'll spend a little bit more on the capital in just a moment. The other piece to fund the increased cost of fuel and be able to continue to pick up trash and be able to provide that service, we're recommending about a $10 increase in the solid waste fee, and that is about 83 cents a month for that. And then no stormwater increase. So those are your primary, or those are the fee increases. We're not recommending changing anything else at this point. So I wanted to just kind of reiterate and bring back the budgetary landscape. We saw this during your strategic planning session, but I think it's a really good illustration and understanding of what is going on with our finances. So you remember, we had the dollars line, we had the demand for services line. So there's almost infinite demand for service across the community. We knew in 2026 that our expenditures and our revenues were balanced with the tax rates that we adopted as part of 26. As we went forward, we had known cost increases, okay? So to provide the same service, and I want to clarify something because I think it's important to understand when we say same service, we don't mean same cost. We mean same service. So it's not a dollar. The dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. Everybody knows that. We all know that from the perspective. And governments are no different. In fact, the cost of government, because of the goods we buy, the consumer price index is based on eggs, milk, power, those things. Well, government buys asphalt, which is a petroleum heavy type of commodity. We buy, we have personnel. We buy, the cost of the things we buy are increasing at a faster rate than even inflation. So to provide the same service, the same level of service, that cost was $227 million, $227.4 million. Okay? So that cost going from 26, it's not dollar for dollar, it's the same service level. And I want to be sure that was clear because I feel maybe that wasn't as clear when we had talked about this in the past. If we looked at current revenue.
Mr. Yates.
Yes, sir.
Key point that we brought up yesterday. So basically, this new, or your comparison of the cost to provide the same service, the difference, you have baked in there some new items, some recommended items, correct? In that 227. So we talked about that yesterday.
No, sir. There is no new service provided at that $227 million level.
So what you're telling me is no new hires, no new initiatives, no new programs. The exact same program you're telling me that last year was 213 is now 227 with no changes because that was different from yesterday.
And that's why I wanted to be sure I clarified. No, sir. The $227.4 million is to provide the exact same level of service that we provided in 2026.
That wasn't a question, though. So has any new staff, programs, or anything been factored in to here? Because you had said that you added some additional items to that. You remember I asked you about that particular
So the only additional service that we would be providing within that 227.4 number is the additional mental health response, the 2 mental health response units, which were actually a swap of professional services. So we didn't add budget to OCS. We said instead of using it for contractual services or professional services, we would use it to add those. But no, sir, that is the same package of services with the exception of mental health that you have right now.
Yeah, Mr.
All right,
Mayor,
you got Councilmember Hondros in here.
yeah, can we back up? I think it's just one slide to the bottom line first. So what you were just speaking of, the mental health is on this slide, I think, right? Or maybe the one before. Either way, the 2 mental health response units, how many actual positions are we talking about?
I believe that's actually 6 positions.
6
Or is
positions.
it 4? It's 6.
4 positions as well as the materials, vehicles for those 2 responses.
Thank you.
All right, Councilman here.
Well, I wanted to go back to the second page from the opening, but you brought up some very important things that the mayor was just asking about. Within that 227 mil, and you said that other than those 2 mental health, I guess for OCS, then where are we with our second tier assistant city managers, for example, just to throw out there? Are they, though whenever they come on to be hired, are they in the 227?
Yes, sir. This would be, we would not be looking at the 227 million provides the same level of service. So that maintains our staffing level, including our retention and our compensation. And this may be what you're referring to, Mayor.
So
it includes compensation
Hold a minute,
increases.
Jeff. So the vacancies that are there that aren't filled now, they are in this.
Yes, sir. And and I'll get to that in just a second if I can get to the next part.
And let me clarify what I'm talking about. Your 227 has in there factoring in a 4% increase that if the council says we're going to increase everybody 4%.
That is correct.
And it has factored in there 5% contribution and leveling up of the retirement, but the required contribution to the police.
Oh, so let me clarify. The 5% has always been there because it's required by
Gotcha.
state
But
statute.
I'm talking about to step everybody else up.
It's a 1% increase to the 4 the city already gives. So that 1% is baked in to that 227 and the 4% compensation increase for all employees and honoring the steps that are in PD and fire.
So in the event that that number was 2% or 3%, then there would not be 227. It would be a different number. Would you agree with that?
Right.
Yes, sir. If the council chose not to honor the steps
Right.
or chose to reduce the compensation increases.
And that's the only reason I'm bringing that up
Sure.
is that you can't say the same operation last year
Right,
is
right.
now going to cost this
Right.
without telling us
Right.
with the calculations and the assumptions. You see what I'm saying? 4% is a big deal, and we may say it's only going to be 3%, but 4% across the whole payroll plus the 1% is a different number, and that's not the same level of service.
Well, so I want to clarify one thing, Mayor, and I want to be sure that you and I are talking the same language. When we say provide the same service, we believe it takes the 4% and the 1% to maintain our staffing level. If we were to not do pay increases or to do a reduced increase on the merit, you would not be able to maintain the same services. Just like if you didn't take that second step on PD pay, we'd be back in the same
Right,
boat
but
we were.
you can't say
So-
that because you give a 3.5% raise instead of a 4% that everybody's going to quit and you're not going to be able to provide trash service. See, level of service and staffing. So you just give us the apples to apples. To do the same operation we did last year, to do it this year is going to cost more because things cost more. And I've also factored in that you're going to give a cost increase raise of X. You didn't just say a cost increase for that. You put a number on it and calculated that in there, but you didn't disclose the assumption. So that's why I was trying to get to that.
Mr. Mayor, if I
And
can.
one more thing, because the mayor said he was going to let me speak
Yes,
earlier, but then he spoke, and then 2 more people, because I wanted to make sure I understood. And basically, Mayor, we're pretty much on the same playing field. In the 227, of mill 227, 412, as we look at page 2, all of the asking in the blue is in the 227, right?
Yes, sir.
The 1 cent,
The one
the 2
penny for
cent,
operations is included in the
$10.
227. The $10, because this is a general fund graphic,
Right.
the $10 is on the solid waste side.
That's it.
So it's part of the recommended budget, but for this particular discussion on the landscape, solid waste isn't included here. So no, sir, the $10 is not part of the 227 million. It's only the 1 penny.
So okay, the 1 penny, and not and you say the public safety, 0.02, you say no?
No, sir, the .02 for capital is part of the capital program, so it's not part of that 227 million.
Okay, and so everything except for that, the $10 is in the 227.
It is the general
Those
fund.
increases are, well, okay,
So
all right. I know we
it's-
used to general fund, but okay.
Yes, sir. So it doesn't include solid waste, it doesn't
Right.
include stormwater, it doesn't include the airport, for instance. All of those funds are self-balancing
Yeah,
or
but it
run
never-
off of
it
their
never
own
includes
fees.
the airport, yeah.
And we don't send property taxes or we don't send ad valorem taxes to those funds. So, I believe Doug, you.
Councilman Hondros had his light on.
Yeah, very relative to this, I had it marked as a question from the little packet we had yesterday, but where can we find the page? Where in this budget book is the page, or pages, for the cost of that 4% and the 1%?
Michelle, do you have that in?
I think it's factored in across each section of the reports.
So you wouldn't see it called out specifically. We can
we get
give
it?
you that.
Well, can we put
specific.
that in the parking lot? I'd like to see an aggregate of what that looks like. And then I just want to add this too, when we talk about level of service and more importantly, retention, because I think everyone here in the room is committed to doing right by our team members and staff members. But there's pay and benefits, which is, we all have bills, so we all need that. But there's a whole nother component, which is morale, the vibe and the culture of the organization. So since I've been here and before I got here, the council immediately preceding the one I first got sworn in on had always made a concerted effort. I think that previous council brought all city employees, even the starting positions, up to $15 an hour when that was not a common thing. And then since I've been on, we've continued to adopt the HR and Dr. Hewitt's recommendations for staff when it comes to pay and benefits. And then the last 2 budgets, we tried to do right by our first responders, and we did. I got some questions about that later when we get to it. But we still, since I've been here, we haven't had one department, to my knowledge, that's been fully staffed. So that, to me, speaks to, the pay and benefits may not be the only challenge. It may be something with the morale, vibe, and culture. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill, you had something?
I did. I did. A couple things just to kind of orient where we are at the moment, and presenting the budget. The budget is a culmination of months of work by council and years of work by council. So a couple of years ago, we brought to you the concept of an employer of choice, and we talked about that with the council. The council brought in on that we wanted to show respect for employees. We wanted to make sure that people had living wages, people had opportunities for advancement in the community, that they had clean, safe working environments. Mayor Pro Tem knows the conversation he and I have had about the locker rooms at Transit and other places like that for our employees. That budget prior and the budget in front of you tracks on that. When the council over the last couple of years has lamented on the fact that we don't have sidewalks, we don't have street lights, we're behind on paving, we don't have enough customer service, litter pickup crews, transit going to various areas. You may not have said it this calendar year, but you're continuing a trend that is represented in this budget. when we talk about Home Buyers Hero, about utility connections, about the Office of Community Safety, that's represented in this budget. And so when council, through your strategic planning process, talks about where we are and what we want to do more of or less of, as we did at some of the engagement opportunities that we've had like we did last night, the staff is listening, and that is represented in your budget. It's recommended in my recommended budget. And not saying that if you don't agree with the rate increases that we can't continue that. It just may mean that it takes a slightly different trajectory. It may not be as strong and far ahead. There are clearly opportunities that if council directs that we want to do something different with compensation, doesn't mean that you don't support employees. It just may mean that it may take us longer to get to fully where we want to be as it relates to realizing everything that we had hoped for the employer of choice and being competitive, not only to keep our employees, attract our employees, but also retain our employees against other employers who are also making great strides. I don't know that the state approved their budget at the moment, but I think they were talking about, 18% increases for highway patrol. Those are real threats. We have, we didn't end up with 99 vacancies because of a morale issue alone in the police department. I can tell you the amount of money that y'all have spent over the last 3 years with police is clearly what has had the impact of bringing up those numbers. We increased our take-home car radius to a point that pushes it to where we had concerns about whether or not it was we had to report it as an IRS issue. Because what benefit does it do us to allow someone to drive a car home if we're not saying it's for them to be a responder? So those are all the issues that we've done in that one area. When we look at what we've done with transit, the new buses. And so this budget is not what I want. The tax rate is not what I want. The tax rate is what is needed to bring about the budget that you have described to us that your residents are asking you to provide. But Mayor, I'm going to need a little time. And so what I would ask that y'all do is, because this is the presentation of the budget to the public. As the mayor said, we're take any questions you want, but Jeff is going to try to go through and present the budget as an entire package, because we're not only presenting it to you, we've already given you this when you're small groups, but we want the public who also have to weigh in during the public hearing to be able to hear how the budget in its totality comes together. But in my little bit of closing on this is to say, this is the culmination of months of work. And even after we finish the strategic planning session, which y'all did in February, and we brought it back to y'all in March, we've had new and expanded requests for exciting opportunities and potential new programs that the staff is eager to pursue with council, but all of those also are going to require funding. They're going to require funding. And so those are the things that, as Jeff continues to present the budget as a package, if we could, but again, if council comes back and how the budget is designed, as we told you in the small group meetings, if council says we want this or we don't want that, then we have options to be able to work with council to get you there.
Mr. Manager, I got to go to Mayor Pro Tem real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just make a short comment that since I have been on council, it has always been a priority for us to take care of our employees. I think we have upped the vacancy rate in our staffing because of that. Some of the reasons that individuals leave is multiple reasons, whether it's deployment or whether they get better opportunities from the training that they received here because we gave them an opportunity. The question that I have, though, is about the vacancy rate. Is the vacancy rate calculated in this 227 with the 34 police departments and the 10 or the 12% that we're currently at?
Yes, sir. If I could proceed, I can cover that question because it's actually the next thing I wanted to talk about.
Proceed.
Thank you, sir.
All right, real quick, and want to be clear on this. Because the council is asking for disclosure of how you got to the numbers, does not mean that staff is not supported, right? That we don't, because we say, give us the number figure that you use to get to 227 million, and assuming what 4% increases look like, and we ask for the math, doesn't mean that the council is not supportive. So, be clear, this is what this process is for. So to the staff, we'd love it. We'd love to figure out how to give you 6%. But at the end of it, when we're asking these questions, because it's kind of being couched as if we're saying that that's on the target list, and it's not. That's math. We're trying to know what all the financial assumptions are. We're trying to know where the capital closeout money went before you folded it up in here. So those are pages that should be included. So please understand, staff, that when we're asking for this stuff, that it has nothing to do with you, because we'd love to get this number up to 7 or 10%. But we're just trying to see the math that you're using, all right? And I don't want this to be a more complicated process than it would be by not having any of that stuff. So in the beginning, this is the first of 4. Know that we're going to be asking for the work. So please have your folks prepared for that. But go ahead.
No problem.
Mr. Mayor,
sir. We're
real
happy
quick.
to get that information for you.
So, because the strategic planning was brought up, and I said this yesterday, and it's relevant because we can't say that we fully looked as a council at all of this stuff and put our priorities in place when we condensed our strat planning retreat from 2 6-hour days to 1 8-hour day. There's a lot of the stuff that we didn't prioritize. We know this council can't bind a future council. So, we talk about the plan, and we have to have, just like our CIPs in a 5-year kind of trajectory, so are our priorities. But when several of us say, hey, we want to look at our 1 to 2 year plan, 2 to 5 year plan, 5 to 10 year plan, 10 to 20 year plan, we didn't have an opportunity to look at any of that stuff. And it all comes down to what you just said. It's all in the math. So that's why I was frustrated with that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Yates.
Yes, sir, and absolutely, Mayor, as you pointed out, the staff is done with its work on the budget. We are now giving it to you as a council. We're happy to provide any of our work papers that or how we got there. In fact, Priscilla's going to show us at the end some wonderful tools we now have available to the residents and to council that allow you to go in and look at pretty much anything you would like to see as part of the operating budget from a financial perspective. So, and I apologize if it was in any way suggested that you as a council didn't have that opportunity to debate this and to ask for information. We're here to provide that information and give you quality information for decision making. So to your question, when we looked at it and we said to the directors, okay, directors, given council strategic priorities, given the things you hear on a daily basis, because our directors and then our frontline employees, it's those micro engagements with the residents that are some of our best information around service delivery and service demand. When we asked the directors, what do you see when you bake together all of this input? What do you believe is necessary to achieve those goals and provide to the residents? That price tag is $240.3 million. So if we were to say to the directors, yes, we want to add everything you think you need to provide those services the residents are looking for to meet completely the council's goals, or at least to move in that direction, what would that look like? So that price tag was about $240 million. Okay? So when we looked at it, we said, okay, we know at $213 million is our revenue capacity. To maintain current services and what we believe is appropriate for our staffing levels, $227 million. We looked at other options to close the gap before we started talking about reducing services or raising taxes. We looked at our vacancy rate, to your point, Councilman Hare. We said, okay, what is a reasonable expectation on vacancies? To your point, Mayor Pro Tem, we have the 38 frozen PD positions. They aren't included in the vacancy rate because they're not funded to begin with. So they are unfunded positions. But we said, based on our history and where we believe we will end up, we can achieve just under $9 million of vacancy savings. So we reduced that 227 down by $9 million. We then said, what things can we do with one-time money? What are the equipment asks? What are the one-time payments? What are the one-time items that's appropriate for fund balance use. So we recommended using 1.2 million of the fund balance above your policy level to cover those one-time items, and we can provide you that specific list. Then we said, what are some of the ways we can pay off debt early? Can we make an early payment on our debt, save ourselves interest earnings, our interest cost, but also pay that off so in future we build that capacity? That's about $1.2 million also. So in looking at that, we said, okay, how are we going to get there? Okay, so we worked that down from 227 to about 215 and a half. Then we said, okay, now that we've done this without reducing the services, without reducing our service level, we are going to ask for that 1 cent. So we took all of those different levers that we had available to us, and we pulled those to try to get that number as low as possible. So the 213 was at the current tax rate. The 215 is with the 1 cent increase. So that's how we closed the gap to the recommended budget from the 227 down to the 213, to the 215, or to the 1 cent tax increase. Okay? So we did account for the vacancies. We accounted for one times, being able to do those items. The fundamental challenge that we have as an organization, and we talked about this in our small groups, is that we are heavily reliant on ad valorem and sales taxes. Okay? So this graphic, and I'll break them apart in just a second, but the discussion we had yesterday was, what was the impact of revaluation and what was the impact of the sales tax change? Right? So we actually saw from 25 to 26 a reduction in those two numbers. And for going from 26 to 27, we believe we're going to see about a 5% increase in that revenue between sales taxes and ad valorem. Keeping in mind, in that 5%, it's about $7 million. 2.5 cents of that, 2.4 million, about a third, is related to the tax increase. So if you backed out that tax increase on the estimated revenue, you're talking about less than $5 million of growth in your two largest revenues. They make up over 60% of your general fund. Okay? So this is, when you look at it together, because of the sales tax change, you kind of have to look at ad valorem and sales tax stacked together. We are growing as an organization our revenue base at a minimal level.
Mr. Yates, where does when a GO bond is passed, that's extra added to the ad valorem rate? Where do you account for that bump in here? I know the money is specific, but you take a penny and you add it because the voters approved something.
Yes, sir.
Where is that factored into what you just said?
So when we do those, and we'll show dedicated pennies in just a second. Those pennies that council says specifically, for instance, the 4 cents for capital, the 0.83, I believe, for Parks and Recreation, and the 1.6 for the GO. We segregate those dedicated rates because our debt issuance plan around those segregated rates requires that we build balance to spend down later so that those rates can be as low as possible. So we isolate the interest earnings, we isolate all of that separately from the general fund that is dedicated and committed to that. Because if we started pulling off that fund balance or started pulling off that rate, when we started to make those payments, we would either have to increase the tax rate at that time to what was necessary, or we'd be short. So, for instance, when we were talking about the Parks and Rec bond, now that we've issued them, we know exactly what our debt payment is going to be. We're spending down any balance that was there, so that the 0.83 cents now is sufficient for the remainder of the debt to cover that cost based on estimated growth. And in the GO bonds, because we haven't issued it yet, we're still in the phase of building balance so that later when we issue all the GO, we don't have to come back and tell council, well, it's really 2.5 cents, not 1.6. So there's a fine-tuned calculation that we do that includes interest earnings, cost of issuance, and all those things, so that we can keep that rate as minimal as possible.
All right, Councilman Hare.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Yates, as you continue to speak on one-time costs from fund balance here, one-time costs from fund balance there, I was just pondering, how does those one-time costs ever get back in the fund balance? How, whenever we take all the money from the fund balance and we know what that's there for, how do we ever get it back, or does it get back?
So when we talk about one-time items, the answer is it doesn't come back necessarily from those items. The way to think
I'm
of
not saying so much that it comes back from those
Sure.
items, just how does it come back into the fund balance period?
Absolutely. So the fund balance, if you think about fund balance as your savings account, right?
Yes, sir.
And the way fund balance builds every year or gets used every year is the difference between actual expenditures and actual revenues. Okay? So as we sit today, it's all a budget estimate. We are now 14 months plus from the books being closed on 2027. So the estimates are exactly wrong. We will have, may use fund balance, may not, depends on the economy and those other things. But the way fund balance is maintained is we project and we say, we believe that we are going to achieve savings enough this year to where we get to add to fund balance, or we're seeing revenue trends are up. So we can use some of that savings account to replace equipment that's broken, just like you would if you wanted to replace your air conditioner at your house. You would take out of your savings, and then maybe over time, if you have $100 extra each month, you put that 100 back in your savings to build that back to where you want it to be. So the way that we replenish fund balance is by efficiencies and by revenue, our revenue coming in at times higher than anticipated. And that works conversely as well. Sometimes expenditures are, we're capped by your appropriation, but sometimes revenues may underperform.
So there is a projection whenever it happens, because the way you're speaking now, if I'm understanding correctly in clarity, that there's not a 100% way that's planned for it to return. It's just as we look at it and as income comes in, or along that case, and the savings build up, but it's never a place where we're actually planning to replace what's taken out of the fund balance.
If we were to dip below your policy level and your, not just your policy goal, but your 10%,
Right.
we would bring back to council a recommendation for how to build that back to your 10 and 12% benchmarks.
So we're not
So
taking.
if you're above the 12%, then we don't want to tax, or we don't want to reduce services, or we don't want to limit that, or gain more, or tax for more revenue just to put it in our savings account.
Okay, I'll
So-
let it go.
Mr. Yates, I think where, and I see Councilman Jones, I think the example that he may be trying to get to is when we have something, we work on the project, then we issue the bond, and that puts our money back. The money that we use to do that on the front end, that we advance that from, doesn't it come out of our fund balance?
No, sir. So that is cash. And so it replenishes cash, but from a budgetary perspective,
Where's the cash? Which account is the cash held in?
it goes to in our pooled cash. But from a budgetary perspective, the council appropriates the bond and the bond revenue. We use a pooled cash method here in the city, so all the city's cash lives in a handful of bank accounts.
Right.
So we use that cash, essentially, we loan it to ourselves, if you will, and then when we get the bond money, it goes back in and replenishes. From a budgetary perspective and an expenditure and revenue perspective, it doesn't change your budget, it only changes your cash position.
How do you capture the cash as it relates to? So you're saying none of that cash, I understand the liquidity part of it, is a part of the fund balance as you're pulling it out of various accounts. None of that is in that.
No, sir. Based on, so When you look
So
at
the unappropriated and appropriated fund balance. So what you unrestricted and restricted. So what you're saying is it's coming out of the restricted side of that.
it is coming out of the restricted cash.
Okay. All right.
Okay, because you start with cash on a balance sheet. But the only place that there's an intersection between your balance sheet and your fund balance is in the appropriated, non-appropriated, or unassigned piece. Under the GASB guidelines, GASB 54, we have to account for obligations that the council have created through appropriation as part of saying your fund balance or your available resources are committed to
Right.
that. But from a cash perspective, when we went to the bond market and reimbursed ourselves, it changed our cash position, but didn't change your appropriable fund balance at all.
I understand. Unless you got more from the issuance.
Unless we issued more bonds than what you had appropriated.
All right. All right. Councilman Jones and Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. I know the council sets policy for the fund balance and all of that stuff. How do you take into account, or how is it calculated in regards to with the rising costs, things of that nature, to make sure that that current policy is still relevant, that it still helps us meet our need?
Absolutely. That's a good question. Thank you, Councilman. Your policy level, the 12% policy goal and the 10% policy floor, is attached to your expenditure budget. So as the budget increases, it's 10% of that budget, not a hard dollar number. So if we had said it was, say, $20 million 5 years ago, and that goal is 20 million, that becomes a smaller and smaller part of your expenditures over time. But because it's tagged as a percentage of expenditures, the fund balance requirement will grow as the operations grow proportionally to so if the risk is assessed at 10 to 12%, as your budget increases, it covers that. Does that answer your question?
It does. So if that would shift, that's something you all would be able to share with us to say, hey, okay, the 10 to 12 is no longer adequate. I know the formula, but I'm just making sure.
If the council chose to look at fund balance policy and wanted to have that dialogue, we absolutely can, because there's a number of factors you would consider in establishing that 10 and 12%. It's a council policy. There's no requirement. The LGC doesn't give you a requirement.
Right.
There are best practices, and you have bond covenants in your enterprise funds that require you to keep a certain amount in the enterprise funds.
Yeah.
But as far as the general fund, which is your backstop fund, it's a decision it's a calculation of risk and what's acceptable. So, but I will tell you, the bond market in the GO market looks at what your fund balance is, and that's one of the reasons we're able to retain our strong bond rating at AA+, is because we maintain that fund balance policy level. And to Dr. Harris' point, anytime we get close or anytime we dip slightly below, we put in a plan immediately to move us back to what that is.
That was what I was getting at. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Follow-up question, but correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the state requirement 8%?
No, sir. So
What is the state requirement?
the LGC has no requirement on fund balance. The 8% comes from a recommended letter that happened probably in the the early 2010, 2008 era. The LGC does not set a hard floor. What the LGC is interested in, and this is why it's in your AFR information, is usage of fund balance. If an organization is burning down their fund balance.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Matter of fact, continue for the other council so they can get an understanding. Go ahead.
Sure. So what the LGC looks for, and the benchmark the LGC looks at, is the speed at which you burn down your fund balance. The general statute requires that you can't use more than 5% of your fund balance for operations. So in this budget, we couldn't appropriate more than 5% of our operations out of our savings account. Okay? And that's where some of the communities in the state have gotten a little sideways with the LGC, is because they made mid-year changes that increased their fund balance usage and burned down that safety net at much higher pace. So what they don't want to see is you paying your power bill out of your savings account.
Gotcha.
They're fine with you buying a piece of equipment with it, because that's a one-time to one-time. But if we are paying for salaries with fund balance, that's a non-sustainable model.
So you can use stuff out of your fund balance for one-time payments. But correct me if I'm wrong, and I think you gave us a briefing of month or two ago that our current fund balance is over 16%, which is an excess is over $7 million, correct?
Yes, sir. And then council subsequently took some actions related to the Stadium View project and appropriated $6 million of that overage.
So how much more do we have left over our current 12%?
We're projecting to end 2026 at about 12.66%.
Say that one more time.
12.66%.
Okay.
This came up yesterday. So now, don't want to belabor this. Council took action to say that they would enter into an agreement with Stadium View, and this was encumbered, but we don't have an agreement currently, and we don't know, and an agreement would tell us if that was due in one budget year or over 2 budget years, just like the History Center. You know, there was a vote taken to do something, but the money is not paid out or encumbered. So let's talk about when you don't have an agreement, you know, number one, and kind of where that is. Because, yes, it's encumbered, but it's not necessarily
Okay.
solidified, right?
And I just want to be sure, and as Doug likes to say, I like to be precise in my language. So it's not encumbered, because you're exactly right. If we were to have a contract, it would be encumbered. However, for our CFO to be able to pre-audit that agreement when it comes due, council took an action and appropriated the money. So there is a council appropriation, and under the GASB rules, going back to GASB 54, which are the fund balance rules, that appropriation counts against your fund balance. The auditors would require you to show it that way. If the council came back and did one or two or three different options, you can schedule out that payment. So if you went and the agreement said we're going to pay $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, and $1 million over 5 years, then that will show differently. But right now, the appropriation that the council made is $6 million, or a little less than $6 million, but for round numbers. The $6 million appropriation, council absolutely has the purview. If you wanted to unappropriate that or change the source, if you wanted to say, you know what, we're going to borrow debt for that $6 million, we're not going to use fund balance, council can take that action. But as your actions sit today, and as the ordinances you've adopted, the proper treatment is to show that as committed fund balance. So that is absolutely within the council's purview to change that if you'd like, but it'll take action to do that.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Since it is not contractually signed yet for us to do that $6 million, as you was to say, if we was to come up with a policy to extend that 1 year, as your example stated, 1 year over the next 5 years, that $6 million would not only give us the 4% that you're asking for all the wants and needs for all departments, but that would actually give us 5 cents, wouldn't it?
So
Since 1 cent is $2.4 million.
it would give you about two. The
You can't pay
challenge,
salaries out of that fund balance.
exactly. You wouldn't want to use. You could absolutely use it on the capital side,
Okay.
but you wouldn't want to use that to fund
We're going to find that.
current
4%.
operations.
Okay. Just want to
It's
make
in
sure.
this book.
I got you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Yates, you'll be here till next Tuesday, so go ahead.
So as I mentioned, what we've seen at ad valorem, and we talk about when we talk about sales tax and ad valorem is a steady growth revenue. It insulates the city because the way that we do revaluations in North Carolina, and they happen every so many years, we believe that that is a stable revenue. So your base appropriation or your value isn't going to change significantly until your next reval. On average, we see about a 1% increase in our ad valorem valuation. That 1% is largely driven by business personal property, driven by motor vehicles, and driven by public service infrastructure, and then some limited new construction. So we're seeing that growth at 1%. At the same time, we're seeing operations at 3 to 5%. And then when you look at sales tax, and this was the benefit of one of the benefits of not being attached so heavily to sales tax is a volatile revenue that is sensitive to economic changes. So as inflation will continue to grow up, and some of you may remember stagflation, high inflation, high interest rates, that sales tax will be impacted, and when people stop spending money or don't have money to spend, sales tax starts to decrease. It's a two-edged sword, though, because like in COVID, what we saw, and you can see on this graphic, in the 2022-23 timeframe, you saw sales tax jumped significantly. That sales tax increase added to fund balance, but also allowed council, as part of that process, to do some of the things we did at that time. History Center, Black Voices, MLK commitments, those things, okay? But now, as you can see, as we've changed the methodology, you see the first drop-off going from 24 to 25, 25 to 26 is the big drop-off, where we changed the allocation methodology, and then we see it growing at about 6%, 6.8% for next year. But it's a smaller part of the pie than what it used to be. So 6.8% doesn't get you as much cash on a dollar basis as what you have historically enjoyed. Okay? Because of the method, absolutely, because of the method. Because used to, sales tax and ad valorem taxes were about on par as your total revenue. But now we're heavily weighted ad valorem, which for us is a slower growing revenue source. So we talked about the recommendation for an additional penny on operations. One of the things we really did as we kind of looked at this is we said, okay, what are council's goals? And how do we tie those increases to those goals? The biggest chunk, 52% of the penny increase recommended for operations, is going to safe and secure community, which means it's going to police and fire. A diverse, strong economy is going to 22%, and I'll talk about what that specifically is in a moment. Desirable place to live, work, and play at 18%. So that's our landscaping, horticulture, and a number of items in our parks department. Financially strong city, that is a partial part of our contract to help us during audit time. So we don't have to add staff. We can just bring in contractors to help us during peak times. And in community and business engagement, that's our survey, our resident survey. In our diverse and strong community, coming back to that one, the 22%, that is an investment or a contribution to our parking fund. Right now, based on our estimates with the new contract coming, estimated revenue, the parking fund is not sustainable with just revenue. The parking revenue is insufficient. This doesn't include the debt service for the parking deck. This is only the operational side. There's about $300,000+ of just maintenance, cleaning, power, security, whatnot.
I have
Then
540.
there's about $700,000 to $800,000 for the contractor. We have this discussion slated for one of our work sessions specifically, because based on the long-term viability of the fund, it's a policy decision we're going to ask the council to look at is how do you want and to what extent do you want your parking fund to be self-sufficient? There's no right or wrong answer necessarily, but it becomes a question of, do you subsidize out of the general fund, the taxpayers, to the parking enterprise? So we're going to look to you to help give us some of that guidance. There's some history. I'm sure Dr. Hewitt will help kind of guide us through some of the history in that discussion. But we'll bring back some more information around hours of service and the revenue per hour and some of the changes that have been made and see what that impact was.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem has a question, Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had this conversation briefly earlier, and I think the revenue needed for parking was $544,000, not the $360 that you mentioned. I just can't find the numbers in front of me. But I want you to explain to me, how did we come up with those numbers when we, in audit parking, and the parking contractor was not charging or not getting what they were ticketing for? So that's why the revenue is down. So how do you come up to that conclusion?
So, couple of things about that. Yes, you're correct, sir. When we audited it and looked at it, the parking, our parking vendor, our parking contract, we weren't getting the revenue in. But they have since paid us, and we have gotten that revenue. So it wasn't lost revenue. They weren't sending it over to us. We
So
got,
on top of that, how do we know that the new contractor is going to, how do we know that $544,000 is going to meet what the new contractors will be able to do to increase revenue? So if they increase the revenue, how do you know you're going to need that $544,000?
that is an estimate at this point. We have put in internal controls. As we discussed during the audit in the audit committee, we have put in internal controls around that revenue and the review of that revenue on a monthly basis. Actually, it's more than a monthly. It's when we get that transfer or that deposit to review that and ensure that we are actively getting all the revenue the city is supposed to get. So, but like any other part of the budget, the revenue estimates are based on the best projection we can make based on the information we have in conversation with both our provider and the department that manages it. So public services in this case. When we talk about the 554, go back to the 300,000 versus 554. When you take the total cost of parking, contract services, and operations, the total budget's a little over 1.1 million. When you take out the cost for the contract, which is and credit card fees, you're left with about $3 million or $300,000 of operations. So the 554 necessary to pay for that is the gap between revenue and cost within that fund.
I understand that, Mr. Yates, but so if we're giving parking $500,000 a year, how come it wasn't a recommendation to increase parking?
So one of the decisions that the council has made in talking about past practice, when we started this contract before you were on, Mayor Pro Tem, with our current vendor, we had the same discussions about that the operations costs would outstrip the revenue. And before our budget and our finance officers would allow us to enter into the contract, they brought to council a budget amendment that clearly identified for the council at that time that parking has and likely will continue to be until we get additional capacity downtown or additional traffic downtown will be something that will be subsidized by the general fund. So that's just a historical point. Once we built the stadium, and I think it was Mayor and Councilmember Hare and others, we started based on a parking study that was partly paid for by the General Assembly. We arrived at a rate for a special event parking of $10 per car per event. We ran that for maybe half a baseball season, and the council opted to reduce that. And I think it was, what year was that?
2018.
2018, from $10 to $5. So based on that action that council took, staff has not brought that back. At that time as well, we had a parking enforcement plan that was designed to move people to our parking garages for long-term parking for hours. And for people who needed short trips, we were incentivizing them to be on the street. So if you wanted to run into a restaurant for an hour or a coffee shop, you had a convenient on-street parking. If you're going to be here longer, enjoying the game, we were trying to move you to our parking garages. Enforcement was from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. The council was very responsive to the community, particularly during the days of COVID, and said that in order to maintain a vibrant downtown, we needed to adjust those parking hours. And not saying that those were right from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., but the council rolled that back to 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., which decreased the enforcement hours. A couple of years ago, the council, also being very responsive to the concerns of the downtown businesses, opted to direct staff to roll the hours back from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., but to stop enforcement at 5 p.m. So in the last several years, we've cut the special event parking from $10 to $5, and we've shaved off 4 hours of enforcement time. What we had talked about, Mayor Pro Tem, and I'm glad you brought this up, is this is really where the council can give us that strong policy direction, not only here, but when we get to the point we're talking about transit, there was an additional, I think, $1 million that is requested from the general fund for us to maintain our transit operations above what we currently have in the current year's budget. If council, through your policy discussions and direction, were to say, We understand that we may have to subsidize downtown parking, but we want, instead of that being $544,000, even as a budget projection, staff develop a proposal that we can adopt as part of this budget, that transfer will be no more than $250,000, with a goal of it being no more than 100, but we at least 250.
So hold right there, Mr. Hewitt, because I got some that's been waiting, but we need to address some of the historical parts you said. Councilman Hondros, you've been waiting for a
Yeah,
minute.
Mr. Yates, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned just the slide before this, our ad valorem taxes are projected to grow 1%,
The ad
Approximately.
valorem taxes are projected to grow just around 1%.
and then our expenses, the increased cost of expenses is about 5 or 6 projected,
Anywhere between 3 and 5.
3 and 5, and then sales tax growth was about 3%,
Sales tax for next year is projected to grow about 6.8%.
6.8 from 26 to 27.
Yes, sir.
Now, because they're not equal, right? So I don't know if you have the answer today, if it's in the book, or if you can get it to us for the next work session, but I'd like to know what that 1% of ad valorem taxes, what that 1% represents in dollars. What does the 3 to 5% growth in expenses look like in dollars? And what is the 6.8% of sales tax look like in dollars? Thanks.
All right. Parking is complicated. I think that you have to look at a couple of things. Also, baseball was the driver, and it's only 70 games that they have at home that they bring. So what I had asked yesterday during the small group meetings is how have the number of events that bring people that are the special event parking is charged, has that changed since then? Because Cool Springs was bringing a lot more activity downtown that people were coming for, other than the 70 games. And so, when it came in, do we charge for Dogwood? Free event, free this, but is the parking, is it considered special event parking? So, I'd like to know the number of events that have impacted that as well. What you were getting was that, at too high of a rate, it was a deterrent for people to come, because if you don't have a lot of events and you have to go out of your way for your parking. And then we were incentivizing the parking deck, which was underutilized. And so there are a number of factors with that. I'm particularly not happy with the vendor that we've been using, particularly for parking, particularly with, the follow-up on the customer service. Not the local staff, but the home offices. And then now to hear that they haven't been paying us when they collect this stuff. Yeah, what was didn't you say was a delay in collections?
There was an audit done,
Right,
I believe, about a year ago.
right. We got that report, but that's what I was thinking. I thought that we had changed. Didn't we change?
It's coming up for.
You mean we haven't changed since we got that audit report already?
So, just for clarification, the audit report, we addressed the issues in the audit
Right,
report.
right.
So those issues were addressed with internal controls. It was also time to put out an RFP for those services. Sheila and the team in public services and a team from around the city, a kind of a cross-functional team, have evaluated those proposals and will have a recommendation. Before we brought that recommendation back to council on that contractor, how we decide to proceed with the parking fund and the parking operation impacts that contract. So we held the contract for a few weeks while we had the budget deliberation, because we will not be able to sign the contract again until you have appropriation for it. So we wanted to have the policy discussion first about how we want to operate and what expectation we have of parking. Then we will bring back the contract to council to say this contract aligns with what council has said. But we didn't want to get the cart ahead, the cart before the horse in this case.
Councilman Hare, you had something, or did he clear you up?
Yeah, I was thinking, I remember when they brought the audit report to us and we were aware of that concern. And I thought that once we put another position in place, that we were already moving forward with the RFP on it. And I thought we were kind of like past that. And so we haven't received
The
who that's going to be yet?
The operational side, yes, we've resolved those issues. Who that long-term contractor is going to
Right.
be, because that contract's actually expired and we've gone to month.
Right.
So
right,
who
right.
that contractor is actually going to be is yet to be resolved. But yes, sir, with the
And so
results
we're
of the
still
audit,
doing the
we kind
month
of
to month
addressed.
with the existing,
Yes, with the
and they
existing
have
bidder.
already started funding us whatever,
Yes, sir, and we have internal controls in place to ensure that that
and
is
that's going to
going
be shown
accordingly.
on our next audit.
So, Mr. Yates, as we're going into our number 2, how much more the operational component? You've done the employee, you're doing the operation, now what else you have?
Yes, sir. I can move a little bit quicker if you'd like,
Yeah.
in the interest of time, because I want to be sure we have Chris Colley to talk about the operating or the housing bonds, which I know is an important part for the council. So just across the funds, and this is what Dr. Hewitt alluded to earlier, the total budget is about the same. It's down about 0.6% across from 2026 to 2027. And you can see this is just a expenditure across all funds. And we have a little different look at this in the general fund, which I want to hit on in just a moment. But our sources, ad valorem taxes, are up about 5.3%, and that includes the 1 cent increase. So about, Councilman Hondros, to your question, the $96 million, if you backed off 2.4 million of that, that would be the dollar value growth between 91.2 million and the difference. But we can do that math and provide that to you. Intergovernmental sales taxes, the increase in sales tax is a little bit less than $4 million. But this kind of gives you an idea of where we get our revenue, where we get all of our funding. This is the classic where it goes, where it comes from, where it goes kind of slides. General fund uses. This is the personnel services are your biggest driver of cost. You spend the most money on people. That's why we say they're our biggest asset. So of your $213 million general fund budget, $157 million is personnel, $157.5. Your operating expenditures are about $30. So your total budget from revised 26 to 27 is actually down 1.8%. And that is really driven by those changes in the one-time capital outlays and those things. So it's, if you were to look at personnel services, operating, and contract services, I think Councilman Hondros, that's where you would be interested in seeing. That's really the core of the operations, right? And that'll be a little different, largely driven by personnel cost. So really, where are you investing your money? If we look at our checkbook, we can see our priorities. We haven't looked at it this way, so I thought it'd be an interesting way to look at it for council. We sorted our departments based on highest budget to lowest, because that is how you can tell what your priority is. Council has very clearly told us that police and community safety, police and fire, is our highest priority. Our checkbook reflects that. 75 million of your 213 million, 75.5 in the recommended budget goes to PD. Almost 42 million goes to fire, and then next is Parks and Recreation. So 25.
What's the 2?
I'll get to the second one in just a second. So I'm on the left table right now. So the 25.7 million for Parks and Recreation, that does include the district. The district is a small component of that. It's about 4 million, a little less than $4 million of that. IT, public services, this is the general fund portion of public services. So this doesn't include the part of public services that is solid waste or stormwater, which are our big chunks. The city manager's office at 7.2 million. That includes internal audit, SPA, the Office of Community Safety, which is about a little over 2.1 million of that total 7, of development services, finance, and all the way down to human relations. So this is a way to kind of see your priorities in action. You've told us safe community. You've told us Parks and Rec opportunities, great place to live, work, and play, all those different things. So I just wanted to lay it out for you. And this is the part of economic and community development that is general fund commitment, not the CDBG, the federal funds part. That is not part of the general fund. So, Councilman Hondros, you had a question?
Yes, specific to Parks and Rec. So on that left column, that third one down, Parks and Recs and Maintenance, the 25.7 some million. So we said about 4 or 5 million comes from the district. So it's not city money, right? It's
Correct.
outside of the city. So let's just, for round numbers, 20 million. Are you saying the city of Fayetteville is investing 20 million or more annually? That's just operations and maintenance. That's not CIP.
That is not the CIP portion. So that is and when we say maintenance, that's also our facilities maintenance, because we combine those in this department. So
Sure,
it's
if
across.
we need a new roof or
any
repair
facility.
sidewalk, repair
Yep.
HVAC in any of the rec facilities, but I just want to make sure, because I've gotten a lot of questions in the last year or so about parks and rec specifically, and who, if anybody, looks at the district portion that's paid into this fund? Because we don't really have any purview as a city council over that or those pots of monies, right?
So what happens in that process, they send us a portion of the district tax as revenue to the city. At the end of the year, when we close out the books, we have identified through our accounting system district-related costs. So at district facilities and personnel, we say, okay, if we got $4 million of revenue and that cost was $3 million, we reimburse ourselves the $3 million. Then we restrict, in your fund balance, we restrict the remainder of the recreation district funding. So if you were to look at your financial statement, you would see a line that says restricted for Parks and Rec district. That is a part of your fund balance you carry on behalf of the county. Or not really the county, I said that's incorrect. On behalf of the district.
How in-depth do we look at that every year during this budget?
We look at it pretty in-depth because it's a revenue against expenditure, and we work with Michael and the team. So there's not just you get to do, because there's money in the district, you get to do whatever. We look at it in conjunction with the total budget and it goes through the same rigor that all of our budget goes
But when
through.
you're saying we, you're talking about staff. And
Correct.
when I'm saying we, I'm talking about, does council ever really look at that or not really?
It's to the extent that you look at, yes, but it's the extent you look at Parks and Rec as a whole, because it's an integrated system, not necessarily at that level of detail. We can absolutely break it out and provide that separately if you'd like to see that.
Very good. And then this slide right here, this is projected for 2027, both of these columns, correct?
Correct.
And then can we get for the next work session, an exact copy of this for 2026, 25, and 24? For
Absolutely.
comparison? Thank you.
Absolutely. And to your question, Mayor, the second table on the right is then where's all of our personnel, right? So our personnel expenditures in the organization. This tells you, for instance, then that in PD, $65.8 million of PD's $75 million budget, 75.5 is personnel. So there's $10 million otherwise in the PD budget for fuel, equipment, training, all those other things, all the way down the line. So it lines up and makes sense, but this tells you where, essentially on a dollar basis, where are your personnel costs. And you would expect in those same top 3 or 4 departments that they would be personnel heavy, because local government is fundamentally personnel heavy. So of your 213 million, almost 155 million of it is salaries. Salaries, benefits, and personnel cost. So when we say that, that includes the 401k and all of that.
So Councilman here.
Yeah, Mr. Yates, because I was trying to find that on my chart, the actual breakdown. Show me, okay.
I'm listening to you, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, I see it. So the general fund investments, that is all personnel, from the police all the way down to human relations.
On the right column.
Yes, on the right column.
Right there.
Yeah, so this is, okay, all right, I got you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
It's just a different way.
I like this.
Because as we've had a lot of conversation with council about their priorities, normally we would sort it a little differently. But I really felt that we could look at it this way, because it helps clarify for you and the residents kind of where your priorities are, right?
All right.
Where your heart is where your talents will be. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem has.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that, Mr. Yates, because I'm trying to figure out where the money is. And I want to go back to parks. I want to go back to Parks and Rec. we have tried to be in collaboration with the county with a Parks and Rec agreement for years. So if we was to come to an agreement this year and they was to retroactively pay us for what they have owed us for, that would equal what, $4 or $5 million? That's part one to the question of what we could use that money for. Then part two would be, what would the number be if we didn't have Parks and Rec with the county and didn't come to an agreement?
We can get that for you.
That'll require a little bit of work, but we're happy to provide that. It's not impossible, we just need, there's some finite detail, and I wouldn't want to answer that question without having done the.
But that is also a possibility of funds that we could be using for 2027, correct?
So the indirect costs that the mayor mentioned was at 350 was a semi-negotiated rate that we've, over the last, what is it, Councilman Hondros, 6 years? So that when the council and the commissions, county commissions have been looking, it's probably four and a half. We currently, in the original agreement that goes back some 20 years, we had a $60,000 that was paid to the city or due to the city for indirect costs for us to manage the joint operation with the city and the county. Became an issue of the council several years ago. We've worked with the county to identify what would be an equitable indirect cost. We had settled, was it Michael, is he still here? May have had to step out. I think it was probably 12 to 16 months ago that we talked about 350. It was one of the first projects that Mr. Yates worked on when he came with us here. And we have not been able to finalize the agreement. And so, but I would say that would be a direction, another policy direction for council would be to tell us how and when and what we should approach the county with as it relates to that. But the 350 is for indirect cost. But it would help offset, it would go to fund balance, I guess, because it would be 350.
Absolutely. It would be, it would end up in fund balance. And do we have any other questions from Mr. Gibson?
Yeah. No, just
getting here.
yeah. The main question, Mr. Gibson, was we've been tracking the item on the indirect costs for Parks Rec agreement for a number of years.
Yes.
4 or 5.
Probably, it's easily been 3.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Yates.
One question, sir.
All right, Councilman Harris.
Okay, let's go back over to the general fund investment. Okay, if we're looking at the police at 75 mil, you know, whatever the difference is, and the fire at 41 mil plus the other numbers, that difference between, let's just look at the police, let's just round it off to 10 mil something. And with that 41, so that's about 7 million something difference, a little more, with the fire department. All of the priorities that we had discussions with, and I'm just using those two departments, with police and fire, like the new technology we wanted to see, I don't know, maybe some fire trucks or whatever the case may be. Within those two balance amounts from the difference of the 4, is that where those new priorities, I mean, those new things that we're needing or materials or whatever, that's where it comes from? There's not another ask for that anywhere, is it?
Actually, sir, in the budget you have in front of you,
Yeah.
if you were to look at police and fire budgetary sections,
Yep.
there is a list at the back that's requested but not funded requests. So there was additional lists. Remember when we looked at that other slide, there was $240 million of what directors felt like they would need to progress.
Yeah.
There is also that same list for police and fire. So there are things that police asked for, that the chief asked for in the budget, that are not included in that $75.5 million. That $75.5 million really essentially is to provide the same level of service that he is providing now. It doesn't provide for drones. It doesn't provide for additional technology other than what we already have in-house. Last year, the council approved some funding for additional cameras and the Crime Information Center. I'm happy to say we lit that up a couple of weeks ago. That project is wrapping up. We have the infrastructure and we have some additional cameras, so we're ready if we wanted to add to that. But this budget doesn't include additional funding for that. Just like the 38 officers, if you wanted to do 38 additional, that's an additional penny, probably close to a penny and a half on the tax rate to fund those additional, to refund those 38 officers. So-
Okay, but just for my, I guess, my personal clarity, I remember us going back and forth in that discussion about improving fire and improving police. And I remember personally, we were talking about the drones and the license tag cameras and other different things. And I'm thinking it must have been the last budget season. What is it, 25, 26, 20, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir, as part of the 26
FY.
budget.
So are you saying now that some of what you just stated does not include
None of
those
it.
improved technologies when that's what we talked about in the last fiscal year?
We have exhausted the funding. That was one-time funding. So we have exhausted the one-time funding to the extent that we could to add cameras in the CIC. The additional technology above and beyond what that funding, if I remember, is 1.5 million, give or take.
So, hold on a
So-
minute before you go any further, because I want to make nice popping in my head. Because we also spoke on the new, what you call those things, the centuries.
Speed
The
centuries.
centuries and whatnot. None of this stuff here was covered. We exhausted before we got to.
No, sir, we
improving?
purchased Speed Century. We have 2 Speed Century signs for every district. So we added the Speed Century signs as council directed. We added the CIC and infrastructure for the cameras, and we added as many cameras, or will add, or in the process of finishing up the CIC, and now we'll add, till that money is exhausted. It's one-time money. It wasn't ongoing money in the operating budget. The police chief and team has asked for an additional round of additional technology items and other items, which are, every department has that list. But for you to see, there are, in the departmental sections in the very back, there's a requested but not funded list. For instance, the fire chief asked for an additional ladder company at this point, and
So
we
that's
weren't
on
able
what-
to fund it.
That's in what?
In each of the departmental sections. So
each
you
of the-
see,
okay, okay.
there is additions, there are requests but not funded, and so forth, so that you as council can see them, and we can provide you a different schedule if you'd like to see it differently. But we wanted to be sure in full transparency to you and the public, we show you everything the directors asked for and what the options are around those different things. So they're all in there. And I know, Mayor,
Thank you,
we
sir.
want to try to stay on time, and I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, this is important stuff. So basically, just to recap, the grid to your left are the actual expenses. The one to the right are the salaries or the personnel-related costs.
That's correct.
All right, and so as you can see, that's most of that. So 4% on the slide to the right gives you some ballpark about how much that increase would be, give or take.
So I can do one better than that, Councilman,
Okay.
our mayor. If you look at other appropriations, that 4.92 million, that is the cost of the salary increase at 4%, funding all the steps and funding the additional 1%. We don't distribute in the proposed budget. We don't distribute those costs to the departments. We keep those in a single place so we can do just like we're doing now. We can actually see it in the budget. So if you're looking at other appropriations, the 4th row down under the personnel table, 4.92 million to do the personnel increases.
Okay, all right, recurring.
That will be a recurring cost, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And the last thing, because council, I may have to ask for to be excused so that if, just in case y'all do something I don't agree with, it's not automatic yes. So I'll take I'll take a vote for that. But I do want us to know that in this economic situation that we have, I looked into CIP, you and I talked about that yesterday. I don't see anything for economic development. I know that they're coming to talk about the housing bond, but you know that's our generator. And I would hope that we don't look at this in a prioritized way because economic development and community development is way to the bottom. So that is what drives us and raises the tax base for us to be able to spend all of this. That we've got to have businesses. So I'll be advocating for some things that'll help generate that. But Mr. Yates, go ahead and push fast before we.
Thank you, sir. So I just wanted to highlight, as we mentioned, our investment in public safety. When we look at Office of Community Safety, Fire, and Police, in 21-22, we were paying about $94 million for that community safety. In the 27 budget, that's closer to $120 million. So the council has put its money where its mouth is and has supported the police and fire and community safety. So I thought it important to highlight kind of how that breaks out, because we do talk a lot about community safety and the innovative approach, and we're slowly increasing that. And I will point out that when we looked at it, there is an additional request for about $1.8 million for community safety to build that office out completely. That $1.8 million provides for about 17 positions. So that would be in addition to the $215 million, or the addition to the 1 penny tax increase. So if we're tracking along, the 38 positions, the $1.8 million for community safety, and which we haven't really talked about, but about $700,000 for overhires in fire to ensure staffing. All those three things are not included, and the cost of those is right around $4.8 million or 2 cents.
So, Councilman Hondros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on this slide here, and this is kind of where I'm hammering in, because every budget year is different challenges, right? So last year we had countywide the revaluation. So we had to look at our ad valorem tax rate, and we tried to adjust that as close to revenue neutral as we could. We couldn't quite get there. But last year we invested, I think, and you could correct me, Mr. Yates, you probably know better, I think it was the tune of about $1.5 million to fix compression in our first responders, fire and police. The year before, in 25, we did a heavier lift, which was about $8+ million. I think it was somewhere between 8 and 12 million, to get our first responders back on the step plan, which had gotten messed up. So in those years, in the year before that, in 24, so this is the 27 budget we're working on, right? So the two preceding ones, we did, not last year, but the 2 years before that, we had a 3.95 cent ad valorem rate increase and a 4 cent revenue increase. The 4 was for the bonds, that the voter approved bonds, going back 3 years. And then last year, the year before last, excuse me, so that would be, we're in the 26 budget, the 25 budget year, when we did another 3.95 cent, we told the voters, the residents, the taxpaying residents, that this was for first responders, right? So I'm looking at your chart from the 24 budget to the 25 budget, from the 25 budget to the 26 budget, and the 26 budget to projected next year. Where's the I don't see an $8 million jump, or whatever that figure was, from 24 to 25, and then an additional from 25 to 26. So my question is, when council made that investment, did we take it out of another part of the first responders budget, fire and police's budget, whether it's vehicles, equipment, or anything else, technology?
So if I could, yes,
Please.
and. So going back to that conversation, and that's why I brought us back to this. When we added those tax rates, the conversation at that time was, we gave you a balanced budget at the current rates, given the revenues available. Okay, so council said we want to add $12 million for compensation for police and fire. We achieved that by adding tax rate. You're correct. But also through reductions and other things. So we paused our fleet replacement for PD. At that time, Chief Braden and I talked through it, and we said, okay, we believe at that time he had 75 vehicles above what his requirement was, so we paused. That was $2.5 million to $3 million. We said of the 38 frozen positions, that was another $5 million. So the increase, we whittled that down. But sans the increase, we would not have been able to fund those positions. You wouldn't necessarily see it on the operations side exactly as dollar for dollar, because we made cuts also to try to balance that. So we minimized that rate increase as much as we could. But the reality was, at that time, As you can see in this graphic, sales tax and the impact of sales tax and the change in the values and ad valorem and the rates have impacted our ability to pay for those services. At the same time, while the cost of police and the cost of all of our services, and community safety being the primary, and those additions have increased as well. So you're seeing the net impacts of all of those movements.
And I'm going to stop short because I get passionate about this stuff, but that is not, when we were sitting in this room like we are today, making those decisions, that was not the direction of council. And I'm just going to stop at that.
All right. Did have a question before I go to Councilmember Hare. OCS was budgeted 2.3 in 24 to 25, 2.4, and now the recommended is 2.1. Before it was fully staffed and built out. Was any money remaining in those budget years before they had staff, before they had the programming? Because I know we front loaded that and there was additional money. So how much was spent out of each budget year, and is there anything left, and where is it?
So any of the money that would have been available from 2025 would have fallen to fund balance. I can tell you that a lot of that funding was used to do the studies the council asked for us to do and to look at, and the services there. The 2026 remainder, if you remember, we talked about the Blue Street renovation of that facility. What we are funding that renovation with is the remainder, our leftover from that 2.46. About $800,000 of that remaining operating budget we're going to use to do the renovations on Blue Street. When we looked at 26, 27 and started having that conversation with John, we know concrete now a little bit more about what it costs to operate OCS. So without the expansion of his services to provide the same level of service, with the exception of the mental health swap that we talked about, it's going to be about $2.2 million. It's another additional 1.8 if you want to fully implement OCS to the full 21 positions and all the services that it's envisioned to provide over time. So does that
So you'll
does that answer
get
your
that
question?
number that was returned back to the fund balance, is what you're saying, from year one particularly?
I can tell you what they underspent in 2025. 2026 is not closed, and we'll be carrying that 800,000 at least. We haven't got the bids yet for Blue Street, so I can't give you that number on 2026 because I don't have it. But we can absolutely find out in 2025 spent versus actual,
All right.
our budget versus actual.
Councilman here.
Under the SRO operations, and I see those figures there, just for clarity, I thought that the school board was taking care of all of that. Is this is something?
We
can
receive
you
a
tell-
revenue from the schools, so it's offset on the revenue side. So what we spend, a couple $1 million on the SRO and TCO program, we bill quarterly to the schools pay us. So it's an offset against that. What you're seeing is the expenditure side. There's a revenue also side to that balances it out.
Okay, so this, what I see here, what's in our booklet, all of this eventually is all paid by the school,
Yes, sir. If you're looking at the SRO line, yes.
the school board.
Yes, sir, that is correct. It's a no net impact to the organization, roughly, because there's still supervision and indirect costs that we don't charge. For instance, we don't charge the school system any money for Chief Bryan's time, but he still is in command of the SROs because they're police officers. So it's it's a direct cost, yes, full cost, not exactly, if that answers your question.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So investment in
Mayor Pro
transit.
Tem. Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry.
I was going to excuse you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask for a motion, man. I'm trying to get to this next slide here if he comes on.
All right, I move that the mayor be
trying,
excused
sir.
after this next slide.
So we talked about the increased in investment in transit, and we wanted to show you from 21 to 2027. I will say in 21 and 2022, those are artificially low years because you had COVID relief funds, and we had some ARPA funds that we're using to keep that cost down for the general fund. Starting in 2023, going out, that was a fully loaded cost. So in this upcoming year, the taxpayers will be paying about $9.5 million for transit, which is up about a little less than $1 million, 10.5%. The transit operating budget has gone from 2021 of about 11 million to a little over 15. What we are recommending is that we have this discussion as a work session, because I know council's priority is transit, discussion about regional transit, a western hub, the operations, and some alternative funding sources that could be had in that process. I just wanted to give you context for that discussion, or start to give you context for that discussion. But it's more than we can cover here today. But I know, Mayor, you have to run. But we would like to bring that back to you as one of our work session topics, because we want to understand from council, again, what's your policy goal with the transit system? Are we trying to get to where the fare rides are as close as we can get to covering the full cost? Are we okay with 4 pennies on the tax rate supporting transit? Those are fundamental policy questions we want to ask the council, and then we will build accordingly. So I just wanted to give you that highlight. The CIP investment, in the interest of time, I won't spend a ton of time on it. We covered this on the 8th.
Mr. Yates, before you go for it, just give me one quick answer. I know it's going to come to a
Yes,
work
sir.
session. But if the transit's operating budget is 8.5, why is the recommended transfer 10.5?
So the total recommended operating budget for transit is 15.3 million. So they get fares of right around $1 million, a little less than $1 million. They get FTA funding for operations, and they get city transfer. Okay? As the transfer has gone up over time, as that top block shows you, we are becoming more of a percentage of their operations. We have finally, in the last couple of years, become the largest funder of the transit system, where historically, where the budget was, say, pick 2023, if the budget was 13.4 million and the general fund was sending over 6.9, we were right at half. So as cost of operations have grown, the other funding sources have not kept up. The general fund is covering that additional cost. And we can talk about fare box recovery and those kinds of things, because as we talked about yesterday, we have had no rate increases since 2013, related to that. But looking at the system as a whole and where council wants to go with it, before we make additional recommendations, we want to have some policy discussion about what you want to see as your system. Tiffany always talks about, and Tiffany Neal, there she is, talks about the system of choice versus the system of need. If that's our policy direction, then we have to fundamentally change the way we fund transit, because the model you have is not sustainable. Much like parking, much like those other things, we're going to ask you as council to give us some policy guidance. What do you want it to be? And we will price that accordingly, because there's always a difference between what you want and what you can afford, right?
Right. Let me
So,
take a quick
go
vote
ahead.
real quick. There was a motion by Mayor Pro Tem to be excused, seconded by Jones, I think. Show of hands, or Councilor, actually, you gonna keep me hostage? All right. Thank you, Council.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Did you want to add anything else? So are we going to have this in a work session prior? Well, we won't do it prior to our next budget session. So will we just skip this item until we get down in the weeds?
It's slated for one of our budget work sessions, so I'll go with you over the budget work session recommended topics in just a moment.
Okay.
Councilman, or Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, that's good.
The next thing, which we know, and this is one important slide that we didn't include when we talked about CIP, is what is our investment in sidewalks? There's been a lot of conversation around sidewalks and a lot of that, so we wanted to be sure we highlighted. From 2016 to 2026, our annual average investment was about $1.1 million a year in sidewalks. That doesn't necessarily include those that were adjacent to renovations or when we tore out a street and we put it back and we did all the infrastructure around it. But this includes direct sidewalk investment. What we have planned in the CIP that is recommended to you is $2.5 million annually on average. It goes up and down because it's planned on specific projects. But we are planning and recommending about $2.5 million annually for sidewalks. So I just wanted to bring that to you and show you this kind of, it's a little different look at it than what you would see in the CIP because it's broken out across projects. But I thought it's an important component, and I know that you get asked by your residents about sidewalks, and there's also funding for pavement markings, and those kinds of things recommended in the CIP and recommended as part of the 1 cent increase.
But what is left out of the general obligation bond when it comes to sidewalks and pavement?
We have about exhausted the general obligation bonds. So this is switching over from the general GO bonds going over to ongoing funding, whether it be general fund transfer, so that dedicated capital tax rate, or through POW bill funds or some of those. Just depends on how adjacent it is to roads and what parts of town it is and that kind of thing. But
Let me just add one more thing. Looking in your notes, and I don't know where I seen it or not, did we receive POW money last year? Because I think it was left blank.
We did receive POW bill funding. We're projecting it to be about 6.8 million coming up in the next year's budget, which is a little down. That may change based on what the administration does with gas taxes. But we await, and we are waiting to see. If Mayor Pro Tem, if you could point us out where you saw that as a blank, if we did that, that was an oversight on our part.
I have to find it again.
Yeah, we did receive POW bill funds, and I don't remember exactly how much.
I know you had a screen. It was a couple of years that it was blank. I don't remember what years it was.
I will say, we've gone back and forth using POW bill funds for operations and spot repair, and some of those. Right now, we use a portion of our POW bill funds to do eligible expenses in the operating budget for the street maintenance program and in the capital program. So there's been a different mix between those years. So that may have been what you saw, but we can take a look and absolutely ensure that that's accurate.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, is there a column that I don't see where that sidewalk, what is it? I think it's called pay in lieu of?
Payment in lieu of,
When they don't do the
Installation.
sidewalks and they pay into the funding, what is that item called?
Byron, can you?
And then where is it? Where is it listed?
I'm going to defer to our subject matter expert here.
He the man. Thanks,
So,
Byron.
yep, so the sidewalk and pay of is basically when a developer comes in, and it is.
No, I know what
Okay,
it defines.
yeah,
I
so
understand that.
it's
I'm
held
saying-
in as, I guess, a restricted revenue, because that sidewalk can only be used for specific things, so we don't use payment in lieu of for maintenance, for instance.
Yeah, but what I'm asking you, where is it? Where is it listed? How much money is in that
I don't
budget?
think it's held in here. I don't think that we program it as a revenue every year, because it really is dependent. Like, I couldn't tell you in fiscal year 27 how many developments are going to come in
Yeah.
that has
Yeah,
a payment in lieu of.
I was just wondering how much money was there, and then were we actually using that pay in lieu of somewhere?
So in the past, when we have built up that payment in lieu of fund, what we would do would be, we would bring it to council as a budget ordinance amendment to take it from that holding account and put it to a specific project, and we
You
would,
don't know what the amount is right now, do you?
I don't know what the amount
Could you
is.
get that for me?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Also, you mentioned, Mr. Yates, something about markings. I don't know if that's marking off the sidewalk where you cross the street or something.
It's all of those. So it's the turning
And it
lanes,
doesn't mean-
it's
okay.
crosswalks, it's bike lanes, it's all that stuff.
Okay, great. Last budget season, I requested funding for that. I don't know if it was 2 million we received or whatever, but if you could let me know where that is, the amount, if anything was left over for this fiscal year, and where is it?
So there's a couple of components to that. Yes, sir, we can absolutely provide that to you and how we've spent it. There is a part in the 1 cent tax increase. If you look in the transmittal letter, there's a laundry list of all the items that we are recommending the 1 cent cover. And that laundry list includes some spot repairs and spot repaving and spot striping, if you will. Spot's my term, not a technical term. But where they use it for incidental. Then there's also included in the capital funds, in the capital budgets, under pavement marking projects, for specific projects in specific areas in the plan. in
Let
their
me ask you
plans.
this.
So,
I understand what you're saying, but let me ask you this because you said something that it wasn't friendly for me.
okay.
If last night, though it's come up many times, but last night in Doug in the district, it came up. People were saying, we need those arrows and those turning symbols and things along that line. Then you just stated that sometimes the funding is used elsewhere. Now, when I request, and if I'm wrong, please, clarify, but when I requested the funding for things like that, like, turning or the lines, because the citizens need that for guidance, especially as they get older. And I wouldn't really like to see that resources used other places.
So I apologize if I implied that or if that's what you took from my comment. No, sir. So the money for pavement markings is spent on pavement markings. So
whenever you get that, I would like for you to get that, and I would like to know the money that was there, the budget that was there, and actually where it was used. I would like to just see that for myself.
we'll
and maybe
pull that
share it
list
with council.
together. But yes, sir, any money that was set aside for pavement marking, I'm fairly certain that Public Services would exhaust it, first of all. And
Yeah, I'm pretty
because
sure,
it, only goes so far. When I was referring to spot programs, there are a number of those spot programs listed in that penny increase that are included in paving, sidewalk repair, and crack sealing, and those kinds of things. Of those, one of those items would be pavement markings that are itemized on your list. So I just want to, and I apologize if I wasn't clear about that.
We cool. It's just I wanted to make, because that's such a big issue for
Absolutely.
some of our residents,
Absolutely.
and I would like for that money to be
I want to follow up,
specifically
though,
used
if
for
I,
that.
are you finished, Councilman Harris?
I guess I am, sir.
Is that funding for the markings, is it exhausted every year? And if so, how much is that money?
We don't use debt funding necessarily for the project, for marking specific. So if it's incidental to a project or part of a project, then yes, we would debt fund it.
But Councilman Harris just said that, I believe he's correct. Last year, we set aside a certain amount of money for pavement markings. The question is has the money been exhausted?
Yeah, so this was one, if you remember last year, it was a parking lot item where you guys gave $100,000
Right.
for pavement markings.
Right.
That's all it was.
I don't know the exact, it's less, we have less than $1,000 left. So
Wow.
yes,
That's
so
okay. I thought it was more than
if you give us funding for that, we do have, and this specific project, it wasn't new markings. This was going where the markings were faded. So this was not like striping a new, this was the faded ones. Yes, we've exhausted all that.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm sad that the mayor left because we have this slide specifically for him. The, in the capital budget, you want me to go back one? Okay. Well, we'll be sure to provide this, but when we talk about funding the CIP, one of the sources we use to reallocate is that we close projects out. So any of the remaining funding, the dribs and drabs and bits and pieces, we repurpose those funds to help offset any necessary rate increases for capital. That process goes on as part of the budget. So there's not a process where we come back to council unless council decides this is the way they would like to do it in the future, where we say, here's our closed list. Here is the bucket of money. What would you like to do with it? What we do is we say, okay, this is a source to help offset the cost of these other projects. The impact is 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If council chose to want to have that come back and be like a designation or like a use of fund balance approach, what that would do then is short those other projects by the 1.7 million in this case. So, but we have gone through, and remember this is a point of discussion last year. We have gone through and reviewed projects that are ready to be closed. And these are the remaining funds, the remaining project amounts in each of these funds that were then respent or reallocated to projects within those funds. So we don't transfer them back to the general fund. Some of these you couldn't do that. But we reallocate them to projects that are cost increases or new projects that we're recommending so that we don't lose any of that funding or we don't let that funding go unused. We want to maximize every penny.
Mr. Yates, let me just add, how many projects are left that were started in 2025 but won't close until September, October? And what are those dollar figures?
Are you talking about capital? Are you
Capital.
referring to capital? So the 20 that I'm showing you here, we can give you the specific list of these. But the 20 that we're showing here, they may have started 5 years ago. So these would be the ones that we expect to close with our audit because they are complete.
Yeah, but these are ones that will close by June.
They will close by September. When we close out the audit, that project is officially closed
Gotcha.
because it needs to be audited. So we estimate based on what we have and the remaining of the project, looking at any remaining expenditures and those kinds of things, and we say, this is what's remaining in the project, we are done with it. What can we do then with those funds to offset the need for the recommended budget? So it gets programmed back as a source.
I got all that. I'm just
Okay.
worried about any projects that are still out there that will be closed that we can also use money in addition to this 1.7 that you already have down there.
We don't believe we'll have any at this point, based on kind of the project schedules and everything and working with the departments. But we do get through partially way through the year and finish a project. But it goes into service, which is kind of your benchmark for when you would want to close it. Once it goes into service, it goes on this list, and then when we get to budget time,
Gotcha.
it goes through that reallocation process.
Got it.
And I believe Councilman Hondros has a question.
Pro Tem, may I?
Councilman Hondros?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. Yates. So that total of the 20 projects closed out by June 30, that'll be officially closed out by September when we do the audit. So it's approximately 1.75 million. So at the bottom there it says funding reallocated in the recommended CIP. So where'd it go? That money went back to the general fund and then it's been,
No, sir, it actually stayed with that
Stayed
fund. So
in
for
the CIP
instance,
fund.
in the Parks and Rec bond fund, that
Just moves to new
$394,000, it went
Parks and
to
Rec projects.
another project within that fund to be able to fund it. So like in the stormwater capital projects, that was there to, because it's stormwater revenue, it needs to stay with stormwater. We don't send those back to the general fund. So these are really bits and pieces, if you
CIP
will,
fund.
of
so
projects.
in our other book, the CIP book, the reallocations would be in there?
See it in there.
Michelle, did we show do we have a list of the reallocation by project?
Not by project, but by type.
By fund.
By project.
This would be the reallocation by fund, but we can give you a little more detail on that if you'd like. Okay. All right, so before I let Chris come up and take a break, so we're going to, today was our first work session. Our second work session next week will be compensation philosophy. So a lot of the conversation around pay and those kinds of things and the pillars of the employer of choice and the investment in downtown. So discussion of the parking fund and then expenditures in our transit fund. We have on May 26th, we have a public hearing, the official public hearing on the budget, which is required by state law. Then we have a work session on the 28th that right now doesn't have a topic, but we can absolutely have any conversation the council would like to have at that point. And we have a June 1st work session without a topic. That's your standard work session. And then we would hope to have the budget adopted by June 8th so that we could get that loaded into the system. So,
Yes, if I can just make this point too. No, sir, your question related to that. I can.
Dr. Hare?
What I was just asking, because I know we're going through the budget that's proposed, and I was just wondering if there's anything, can you bring something back to us where there's some cutting on some of those proposed increases?
if you.
Or is this the best you're saying that you're able to do to continue to fulfill the services that you say we need to do? I mean, not that we need to do, but that we do for our citizens.
Well, and I open this up to council and ACMs and the budget staff as well. Our goal today was to present the budget, and it's largely in its entirety, so that you had a complete overview of the drivers for costs, revenues, and expenditures, and the recommendation for 1 penny on operations, 2 cents on capital. When we look at the operations, there are opportunities within that 1 cent for increase for y'all to say, to look at that and y'all give us direction, yes or no, more of this and less of that. On the capital, it is, and not that this is a recommendation at all. This is not a recommendation. But Mr. Yates showed that we are programming through 2032, $2.5 million each year for sidewalks. Even though that is the sidewalks that we put in would be considered a capital activity, Jeff, that actually has an annual cost. And so if y'all were to say, I'm just using this because this is not my recommendation, to say, okay, we are doing, prior to this, we were doing $1.2 million, I think it was the number I saw.
1.1.
$1.1 million in sidewalks. We can live with, because of higher gas cost at the moment, increasing cost of operations, we instead of sending 2.5 between now and 2032, Mr. Yates and staff, we can live with 1.5 or 2. So that may free up some money there. You could come to us and say, Mr. Manager, y'all talked about 544 or 554 going to parking. We want y'all to come back with a recommendation that shows how you could increase revenue to cover an additional $250,000 from that. That may, because that is a recurring cost as well, because again, it's a contract. And you could also come back to say with transit, you're sending an additional $1 million. We want to try to send no more than $750,000. That may be $250 there. But it really comes down to you helping us understand what those drivers are. When Chris comes up and talks about the housing, council has been really supportive of investing in communities, neighborhood, homeownership, poverty alleviation, and all of those things. But if you look at how much money we have at play for the down payment assistance program, and that is, let's say we're out of money. If I told you we were out of money, what would you say? You would say, put some more money in it. If you're out of money at your house, what do you say? And so, but one of the things that you also do is you set an aspirational goal. So if we're going to do down payment assistance, we're going to be able to help 20 families. And when that's out, people may have to wait. I'm not suggesting any of those strategies, but I can just tell you that's where really these meetings, we want to make sure you understand the budget, understand the drivers, and we absolutely can deliver any budget at any tax rate you want, but understanding that we want to understand what those priorities are before we go back to the table. Is that, Jeff?
As a closing note, and as you all spoke, as you spoke earlier, that these are the numbers, and there's not anything. Don't think that we don't love the people, and we don't. I greatly appreciate that, because I've been sitting down with them way before we got to this point, and before we started having the budget discussions. And even when I wasn't feeling well, I was on the phone. And as a public servant, I hear my people, and they're hurting. They're hurting. So it's hard for me. I know we need the services. I know we need to we want more. Residents always wanting more and more and more. But once again, I'm going to say it's very hard for me to be able to support the increases and I know they are minimal, but it's hard for me to support it, and I just wanted to share that. And it's not because you guys aren't doing a great job. It's never that. It's just that the people that we work for and that we hear from, they crying. They're crying. I'll just let you go with this one. I talked to a man the other day. He said, Mr. Hare, about however many weeks ago, I went to the gas station and I spent $55 to fill up my tank. And he says, today I had to spend $80-something. And I know what I drive, so I know what he's talking about. So those are the kind of conversations that we have and we have to pay attention to those conversations. Thank you, Council.
Well, let me just say that, council, it is our task to balance our books and balance our budget. We are tasked to go through this budget book with a fine-tooth comb, come back with recommendations that you can put on the board on what you would like to see deleted and what you would like to see added. Just remember, the recommendation is a 1 cent increase, which is $2.4 million. So those are your numbers that you need to look at. There's a recommendation for 2 cents. There's a recommendation for 3 cents. It's all about your choice and what you want to see. So let's take a 5-minute lunch break and we'll come back with housing. Council. Let's call our meeting back to order. We are going to start with housing and Mr. Calling. When you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was born ready. All right, so this afternoon, I want to talk about turning the Housing Opportunity Bond into clear outcomes. The bond gives us a finite but important tool. Staff is asking council to confirm how the remaining funds should be organized so that we can address immediate project needs, add down payment assistance capacity, and preserve flexibility for larger, more impactful projects. The bottom line, these dollars are limited, so the goal should not be to just spend them. The goal has to be to make them count. So what we're aiming to do this afternoon is refresh the Housing Opportunity Bond framework. Several folks were not on council back in March of 23 when I brought forward a kind of a general concept for spending the $12 million.
Wait a minute, Mr. Calling. Do we have this presentation in front of us or just on the screen?
I'm on the screen, I guess.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
We also want to account for the bond resources that we've already earmarked for some projects that have come through in the past year. We have a single-family project out on Rosehill Road with Kingdom CDC that has a funding gap. Our down payment assistance program needs additional funding to continue. And then we want to frame a plan for the remaining bond proceeds and for future council actions. So why is this coming back? The framework, like I said, that was March of 23. Development costs, interest rates, home buyer affordability pressures, everything has changed since 2023. The only thing that stays the same is that things change. We've got a couple of projects right now that need funding. And we need some direction from council before we try to move those things forward. So previously in December of 22 and March of 23, so this is right after the referendum passed for the $12 million, staff presented a framework for $9 million in rental development, $1 million in single family housing development, $1 million in repair and rehab, and $1 million in down payment assistance. As we came back a few months later, we refreshed that a little bit and we changed rental development to 8.9 mil and took $100,000 to say that we wanted to bring in somebody to help us with land banking potential, what sites we should look to acquire. The core structure of both of those were rental production, preserving home ownership for low and moderate income people, and housing assistance. At both of those conversations, council asked me and my team to focus more on home ownership. So the current framework that we've got today presents updates to that structure and is responsive to council's interest in incentivizing home ownership. So currently, development costs remain elevated. Infrastructure costs are continuing to increase. Home buyer affordability remains challenging because rates, prices, and available inventory. Down payment assistance demand is strong and requires additional capacity. Major rental development opportunities require timing, underwriting, and developer readiness. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. So we've got some current things committed. Out of the $12 million, 4.38 has been committed to various projects. Central Park Villas, which is a partnership between a private developer and the Housing Authority, has 1.88 million of the housing bond committed to it. Murchison Choice has all in 2.5 million, which is very different than what we had 2 years ago with the application, which was up to 6 million. We were fortunate enough to use some other funding sources and some additional partnerships, and the Housing Authority put some money in that brought that number down. But we're using proposing $1 million of that for rental development for Murchison Choice, 500,000 of it for homeowner rehab, and $1 million of that for infill home ownership. That leaves us with an unallocated balance of 7.6 million, or about 64% of the total bond.
Could I ask Mayor Pro Tem, before you go forward, because with some of the council members, new and old probably, explain to them, because I remember when we brought this on board, explain to them what infill development means.
Yes, sir, that's a great question.
'Cause that was, we purposely brought that in for older neighborhoods.
Absolutely. So this is where we may have an empty lot, or we may have a house that is uninhabited and dilapidated, where we would work with a developer, nonprofit, for-profit developer. We would help finance them to buy that lot, build the house, or fix that house up, and then sell it to a qualified new home buyer. We would then use the money, rather than the developer pay us back, we would use that money to have down payment assistance for that new buyer.
Councilman McNair,
What's the return on their investment?
turn your mic on.
So the question was, what is the return on investment for the contractors?
Yes.
So the program that we structured has limited caps on what they can charge for a developer fee, what the general contractor's profit margin can be. But long story short, that's impossible to answer. So we've got a model where an infill house in a struggling neighborhood might cost more to build than it sells for, right? And in that case, the city is functioning to help mitigate their losses, right? Because nobody hopes that happens when we start out. There are some houses where they could build it and it sells for $30,000 more than it cost to build. In that case, they have the potential to make $30,000. They have the potential to make a lot more money if they build a $400,000 house in a prime location. And so those profits, while they exist, are less than what you would get with what people are building in market rate prime locations right now. So it's a per deal kind of thing. Generally speaking, they can charge a 10% developer fee and an 8% general contractor profit, but all things are kind of negotiable. Those are the caps that we have put in the program. Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to talk about two near-term needs. The first one is a project that we approved about a year ago. It was for 16 homes off of Rose Hill Road for new for-sale home ownership. The city used $750,000 of American Rescue Plan funding for the infrastructure on a 3.5-acre site. That's in partnership with a longstanding nonprofit in our community, Kingdom CDC. CDC stands for Community Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit that helps build housing, helps with homebuyer education. Some of them, CDC mainly focuses on housing here, but some of them do economic development stuff like small business support as well.
Is there going to be a different value in those two houses? The 9 with 80 below and the 6 with 120 above?
That's a great question. So the first thing was, once we got through site plan review, the 16 became 15. 9 of them are for people, households earning below 80%, and then the remaining 6 will be capped at 120% of the area median income. Generally speaking, these houses have 2 floor models. So regardless of whether the buyer is at 80% or 120, you'll have 2 slightly different variations of a similar sized house. Really, the difference between these 2 is the amount of subsidy each buyer needs to purchase it, right? So one might need $20,000 in down payment assistance, the other might need $40,000. Yeah. So now that we've gotten construction bids back and PwC has reviewed the infrastructure and engineering, that nonprofit is short $422,000 to close the gap on this project. That number grows the longer we sit. And so I don't have any other grant funding sources, any other types of funds to fill that gap. So the last place that we could get that money from would be the housing bond. But what that gives us is 15 brand new single-family houses. It gives us moderate income new homeowners and middle income, workforce income new homeowners.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilman Hondros.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Director Carley, that last line there, that 422,000 plus, is that only infrastructure?
Yes, sir.
Is it all or majority PwC?
No, a good chunk of it is asphalt and grading for the roads. But there is some significant water sewer engineering that has to happen as well. I don't have a line item budget right in front of me, but we could definitely get that.
But those tap fees, because if you divide 422,000 by 15 units, is 28,000, a little over 28,000 a unit. My understanding, and I haven't confirmed this, but Mayor Pro Tem, you may know as the PWC Commissioner and Liaison to Council, but new tap fees, water, sewer, electric, is about 22 grand per single-family home. Just for whatever that's worth. Thank you.
Have we talked to PWC about those fees on how we can collaborate some type of way for in-kind for them to do that connection, to lay that water and sewage?
We can absolutely have asked the developer to do that. Yeah. Honestly, I have no doubt that he has, but I can get that information and confirm it.
That would be great, because I think we're in collaboration with a few other things dealing with PWC. It'd be a great time to bring it up. You can get with the
Yes, sir.
city manager, he'll give you the details. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Mr. Cawley, is this ask a loan, or is it we just need money to finish it? From my understanding, this is a loan, correct?
Yes, so the total support from the city would go from 750 out of American Rescue Plan to just about 1.2. And so the way that would work is the first place that we seek repayment is to apply the debt to us to each one of the home buyers for down payment assistance. So that money wouldn't come back to the city and then go to the home buyer. It would just kind of transfer to the home buyer. At that point, once everybody is closed and the project is closed out, we get certified costs from the developer. We would look at how much it costs to build the houses, how much he sold the houses for, and then we would get repaid from that. He gets a developer fee, and then we get repaid from it. So right now, I don't have a solid estimate of what we would get back. This money would be, the way that we would ask the attorney's office to help us write that is that this money is the one that is preferred to be repaid first.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. Is there I know you said the sooner the better as far as for the 422. Do they have a rough time frame as far as if that money is allocated, given how soon what would be the next step as far as getting this up and going from that part? Would that pretty much be?
Yeah, so there's two tracks in my head. One of it is we dissect this project further, bring you back answers to these questions. We have Mr. Manning from Kingdom CDC come in and talk about it, and then we ask council to take action. The other path is that you provide consensus for us to move forward. And the reason for that is I still require a final council vote and an appropriation of this money. And me and Lachelle got to do a whole bunch of work to revise legal agreements and add this money to it. And that's going to take us a little bit of time too. So time is of the essence to get started on all these things. But there's still going to be a council approval step. The real question is, do we move to a council approval step, or do we bring in Mr. Manning and talk about the financials and the structure of the project and everything?
Understood. And you said the $750K that came from those were one-time, you said ARPA funds, correct?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
So 422 to me seems like it's a significant investment, but as far as as Councilwoman McNair said, the return on investment there seems like doesn't seem like it is there. So thank you so much. I would definitely support something like that.
Yeah, and just roughly, that's about $78,000 per house to help build these brand new construction houses.
Councilwoman Green.
I'm sorry, you calling me?
Yes.
Sorry. Are these ARPA funds part of what needs to be spent by December 31st?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so not just expensed, but spent.
For our
I mean, not
purposes,
just
yes.
encumbered.
Right, yes.
Okay,
Not
I'll
just-
use the
yeah,
correct term,
right,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
not just
Not just
obligated, but they
encumbered,
need to
but
be gone.
actually expensed.
Yes, ma'am.
As an expenditure. Okay, because that is vital to this puzzle in my head, that
That's a good
it
point, yes.
has to be used by December 31st. So we can't delay, if this is something we're going to move forward, we can't delay much longer, because then we're going to tie the developer's hands to not being able to do the project.
Yeah, and even more pressing is, how long are the bids good for before he's got to go back and get new bids from contractors, and things are not getting cheaper, yeah.
Councilman Harris? Anything else, Mr. Collins?
Yeah, so that's the first one. The next one is down payment assistance. Additional funding capacity is needed for the public down payment assistance program. Demand has been incredibly strong, and staff is reviewing funds committed, households served, average assistance, and the pace of use. We're benchmarking peer programs to evaluate whether our program is appropriately sized and targeted. And our goal is to support eligible buyers while preserving the program longevity. This is a whole lot of words to tell you that we have blown through an incredible amount of money, and we have been impactful and helped a lot of folks. The question is, are we helping people to the exact amount that they need, or are we giving a little too generously? And the reason that matters is because $2,000 coming off of every client that we help would help 10 more clients, right? And so that's the trade-off that we have to think about here is, how do we put a program together that's not too tight, that people can't use it, but is appropriately sized so that the people who need it get what they need and that more people can use it. And so the long story
Well, first,
short,
let me say, I think we judge that by coming up with a program or a policy and then finding out that people are not using it and see that we need to make an adjustment.
Yep, that's the approach that we took. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So right now, that I will get some new grant funds on July 1 for our 80% AMI and below from our home investment partnership. But we will not have any more funding for our 81% to 120% of median income without utilizing bond proceeds to do so. So that's another one of those pressing needs that I've got kind of programmed into our framework here. So, this money has some guardrails, some ditches that we got to stay between, right? So the housing bond proceeds are tied to eligible housing-related public benefits for low and moderate income housing. Income targeting varies by tool. And so that's where we have our city attorney's office, bond counsel, some other folks that help us make sure that we're utilizing the right tool and targeting the right populations with it per state law. We also have our city employee down payment assistance program. That one is a bit more generous than what we offer to the average public in who qualifies for it. And so that program has been structured for the past several years as an employee-employer relationship. So that is a benefit that we offer to employees as opposed to a housing program. Staff does not recommend funding the employee benefit program with the housing bond, so you're not going to see that in the recommendations here. So one of the last things to talk about before I kind of show the framework and where we're at is major affordable rental development and reserving some of this money for that.
What do you mean by major?
Like 90 to 150 units.
Wow.
Yeah. So these projects are privately owned. They're done by private developers. They're privately financed with a structure of public and private investment. They're managed by professional property management companies, and they are affordability restricted. The city's role is not to finance the whole project. It is to close a financial gap that the rents create. Usually this is specialized work. We've got some folks in town who do some of this work. You recently funded a 4% deal that was in partnership with the Housing Authority. Those are the type of major rental projects we're talking about. However, I don't want to hold this money up forever. So if it's appropriated, I can put out an RFP. We can find a partner. If in 18 to 24 months no partner emerges, we would come back and ask you to reprioritize those funds.
Have you identified a location?
That would be part of what we'd be asking a developer to bring forward to us. So we're not endeavoring to buy property. We're not endeavoring to be a partner other than be a financer in closing the gap for a private developer. And we'll talk about kind of what we get for this investment just in one or two slides. So what staff is proposing is to reserve $4.25 million for rental development. Home ownership production and assistance, that includes down payment assistance and the Kingdom CDC project, we're asking for about $2 million. And then owner-occupied rehab, that preservation of our existing housing stock in our community that's aging, we're looking at $1.3 million. And so you can see from what we've already allocated to the numbers that we're discussing today of that $7.6 million, what that would look like from the entire 12, which would be 7.1 for rental development, 1.8 for housing preservation, and $3 million for home ownership development and down payment assistance. So by the numbers, I want to talk about what this money does, right? So the way that we have structured these programs has been that the down payment assistance is forgivable. We do that because forgivable loans don't require as much administrative loan processing, servicing, collections, those types of things. But more importantly, it supports household stability and wealth building. This gives them, if they live in the house for a set number of time, it gives them equity in the house. Our owner-occupied rehab, same administrative burden there, going after folks, low-income folks who didn't pay on a 2% interest 15-year loan. It doesn't feel like an effective use of our staff time. When we give out that forgivable loan or grant there, we're helping preserve their equity in the house by stabilizing the value of that resource in our community. That housing is a resource in our community. And we're stabilizing that household there. On homeownership production, when we're working with the developer to build a house, kind of goes back to the councilwoman's ask of, where's the profit go? And I think Councilmember Davis also asked about, does the money get repaid? And so it depends on the deal, right? For somebody building one single house in a lower income neighborhood, where chances are we won't see that money back. The buyer is probably going to take the entire amount that we subsidize that house as down payment assistance. For somebody who's building a brand new subdivision and has a good piece of land in a nicer place, like a good rated school district or something, those houses will likely appraise for more than they cost to build. And so there's an opportunity for the city to receive some of that money back. So it just depends on the three main factors: location, location, and location. Rental development reserve, these are always repayable loans. These are income producing projects. They collect rent. Real estate increases in value over time. There's no reason for us to hand this money out and not expect a return. The return we get is not great. We're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4% interest loans. A lot of them are deferred. A lot of them are interest only. And a lot of them are 20 to 30 years long. Now, for that 20 to 30 years, we have rent restrictions on that property that it helps serve low and moderate income people. So the key takeaway here is that these bond funds are incredibly limited. This is not an investment strategy. These funds do not revolve quickly back to be respent. What it does do is get us 620 to 685 housing outcomes. Outside funds leveraged using this money, new or preserved taxable value, and long-term affordability. That's what we're investing this money for. So to talk about the breakdown of the total $12 million, $1.87 million, that's 50 to 55 homeowner rehabs. That includes emergency repairs, accessibility upgrades, and facade improvements. $3 million is 75 homeownership opportunities. That's a mix of new affordable homeownership units and buyer-side down payment assistance. $7.1 million for rental development is 500 to 560 affordable rental units. That gives us approximately $13,000 to $14,000 per rental unit supported. Every deal is incredibly different. We put $1.8 million of this money into Central Park Villas to get 84 units. We're putting $1 million into Murchison Choice to get 323. They change dramatically depending on the funding source. I'm also trying to use our federal funds to layer on top of those things. And so there's not a one-to-one, but that's the best projection I can give you on what $7 million gets us there. So the requested direction from council is to confirm this allocation framework, give direction to staff on allocating the 422 to the Rose Hill Road project, give direction to staff to add capacity for the down payment assistance program, maintain the major affordable rental reserve that was suggested, and then allow staff to return with required budget amendments, project ordinances, agreements, and project-specific approvals.
All right, council, any questions? Well, first, let me ask Mr. Carter, since I don't see any of my colleagues having a question. When you first started your presentation, you talked about how we wanted to get more homeowners and less renters. Why is most of your budget for more renters and less owners?
So the little over $4 million that I'm proposing to put in a rental reserve is based on my experience, is going to be what it takes for one project to be approved in that 90 to 150 unit range. It's about scalability. These programs target different folks, right? We know that it is challenging for people to purchase a home, to get the down payment assistance to buy a home. We also know from dated information that we're looking to update that well over 70% of the people who make less than 30% of area median income, people that work in our service industry, I'm sorry, 70% of the people pay more than half of their income at that low income level. And so using these investments into brand new, privately owned, affordable housing construction allows us to reserve some of those rental units for folks who are not near home ownership yet, right? And so while it's important, and I feel that we've been responsive in more than doubling the home ownership support from what we presented a couple of years ago, rental development is probably our biggest bang for our buck, but it does require a huge chunk to do it.
You're just trying to do both simultaneously.
Mayor
With
Pro
very
Tem.
limited resources, yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, what I would just ask y'all to, is Chris does a great job of talking about and bringing it back to source of funds. So the source of funds for this that you're talking about is the voter-approved $12 million for GEO bonds.
Yes, sir.
When we put that out, and this is a question, this is not a statement, that the voters who, I think it was 63% support for that,
Strong.
was it for us to help Doug get a house, or was it to make sure that Doug had adequate and affordable housing? When we were pondering these, we've had robust conversations with the team away from council to say, it's no secret, you look at what my tax bill is. My tax bill for the city is probably less than $2,000. So when you look at my neighbor's tax bill, it may be $2,000. A neighbor across the street is $2,000. Neighbor Catawampus on all four sides is $2,000. It's about $10,000, $12,000. So for the $12,000 that you have acquired from my tax bill, if you were just using ad valorem taxes generated, that would pay how much to a one down payment of assistance at $20,000? It would take at least 10 of my neighbors, possibly if we're at $2,000 city taxes only. To me, when we go out and we're talking to the folks about homelessness prevention, the Day Resource Center is appropriately named. It is not only for people who are homeless, it's also for people who are struggling to maintain their houses. We look at the extended stay where we had the fire on Cedar Creek Road. Those folks were living there. That's what the impacts. The folks at Regency Inn, they're living there. So it was with a great deal of excitement when we started partnering with Housing Authority for the Catalyst Site 1. It's great excitement when we're able to help these others as well. But the source of those funds is $12 million. And like Chris said, and I think you've also given us clear direction about this as well, is spending this money thoroughly, completely, and impactfully so that in 3 years, if y'all want to go back like many cities do and ask for a $30 million housing bond, you've got real projects that people can say, I can touch and I can feel. And so those are just some of the considerations, but this is for how you propose to use the GEO bond referendum component.
Yes, sir.
Let me just also add, Mr. Manager, that is true. But I believe as we push for the general obligation bond, we just talked about affordable housing. We didn't say whether it was going to be a home or whether it was going to be an apartment. So you also have to look at those individuals who are struggling to buy a home, who has been in an apartment for 5 years, who is trying to gather enough money to save to buy them their first time home. So you have to look at both aspects of it. Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
I thought that, I hear what you say about the GO bond, and I agree, but I thought he stated that the GO bond was, what was it, 750,000? Wasn't that the amount that's a part of this?
That was the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Okay, the
Yeah.
American Rescue Plan, this right here, the 422, 125, that has nothing to do with that, does it? This is what you're asking for that you need. This is in addition to that. I mean, so I thought I heard you say that it was. I could say that's them two different things. So this right here is money that we are going to give from, I guess, the general fund.
That's why it's a budget item. That's why it's good to have staff to go back and put it as far as the budget
You're not
process, so
expecting
we can see how we can do
a
it.
thumbs up or anything right now, are you?
So,
Well, that's one of the options.
this is from our bond capacity, right? And so this isn't. So Jeff, I could probably use a hand on explaining how that is programmed in here.
But this is bond.
Yeah.
Right.
Councilman Jones?
Hold on, I'll let him. You can go ahead, sir. I'll jump right behind him. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
So if I could, when we put in the general GO tax rate to cover those bonds, we programmed in the issuance of the $12 million in the 27, 28 timeframe. So if you as council decided you wanted to allocate that and how you wanted to move that program forward, it's already baked into your tax rate for us to be able to issue it. Remember, we had that conversation about taking a little bit early so that we could level load the tax rate over time. It's programmed in, so it wouldn't be additional draw on the general fund. It's already baked into your tax rate.
And the 422 is proposed to come from the bond.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Jones?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. First, I appreciate how you did break this down. Back in 2022, I do remember some of the conversation around some of the community, and it was for my end, it was mainly around, they saw the benefit for home ownership, of course, but that rental aspect was extremely key around that time as far as affordable housing. So that's why I can, appreciate having that rental aspect. Again, I'm for home ownership. We should press for it. I'm 100% for that. At the same time, we have to have you have to have that rental assistance, because the reality, some people are not in a position to buy, and some may make that transition, some may not. And so to have the inventory, thinking ahead, if individuals see what we're doing with that, if something comes up again where we have to go back to the public and act, we can have something there so that they can see. Then with having those particular units, then if someone moves out, being that there are some rental restrictions on it, say within that time frame, now, I hate to use recycling, but someone else could move in and still benefit from that rental assistance, if that makes sense. So this is why I like what you have laid out for it. And we do give, again, to individuals that want home ownership, we do push for that. At the same time, we also know with the housing shortage period, everything is not going to be home ownership. And so I think we do really have to dig in and consider that rental assistance, especially if we have individuals that want to take advantage of your loan program and actually help build some of these, some of these developments out so that they can help. So I appreciate that rental aspect, because that was, again, just from my purview, that was a major determining factor as far as why some people had voted for that particular bond referendum. So thank you.
Councilmember Davis?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Will there be a deeper presentation about the affordable rental development? Like, will we have something else come to us about how that looks and all that kind of stuff?
So what I would do here is I would have my team put out an RFP saying that the city has funding available for rental projects.
Okay.
I would ask developers to submit. We would underwrite it and then bring you back a specific project for approval.
Okay, and so your ask today is basically everything that's on the last slide, the requested direction.
Yes, sir.
So,
I'm sorry, say that again.
his ask.
His ask today is going to be part of our budget, because that's going to be included in their balanced budget for him to use the $12 million for the general obligation bond. Is that at the,
So, Mayor Pro Tem,
go ahead.
I believe if I heard ACM Yates correctly, this bond capacity is in your current year budget.
So we don't have to, it's
Oh,
not. for
current
the
year
next
budget,
Yes,
not 2027 budget.
So when we vote today, it should be done today, not waiting for the budget to be passed.
So the intent for today, it's in your capital plan, so it's in the future years of your capital plan, so it's not in the 27 budget. If council gives direction to Chris that we want to move forward with this plan, and that's the direction council would like to go, or you want to mull it over, we would start crafting the programming and bring back
An
as part of the
increased
budget or
budget.
anything else that needs to happen to make that go forward. But knowing council's interest in housing and having that housing bond, it was the appropriate time to go forward and have that conversation with you as a council. But we'll take direction and move that forward as appropriate as part of the budget, or if it's going to take longer than that to craft. There's no timing requirement. We will do whatever the council would want to do in this case, but we wanted to lay out in front of you what the plan would be for the bonds. And if you wanted a different policy direction or something different, then we wanted to be able to work on that.
In essence, if you wanted to use this general obligation bond, you would have to send it back to budget for them to come back to us for another increase on what it would be to pay for this $12 million general obligation bond.
For clarification, Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, the rate already covers this debt. So you just have to tell us if this programming is correct. There's the programming and all the legal requirements and all the implementation stuff. The financing side of it, we've got largely worked out with the current tax rates we have.
I got you. But which rate? The 1%, the 1 cent, the 2 cent, the 3 cent, which one?
In the already dedicated capital rate that I believe was 1.6 cents that that you as a council adopted for GO debt, just like we advanced the money for streets.
Right.
We would advance the money for this programming as needed, and when we reached a critical mass, we would then take those to the market and
Gotcha.
borrow that money and
Borrow that money
replenish
for-
our cash.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Did I answer your question, Councilman?
So it's council's pleasure. Let me give it to you again.
One more.
Councilmember Alejandros.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Director Carley. How time sensitive is this? Do we have to make a decision today, or how behind the eight ball would we be if we did it next work session next Thursday?
So right now,
This,
right now on the Kingdom CDC, he's awaiting a determination from the city. That is, we've reviewed his project. We've found that his estimates and expenditure needs are acceptable, and so we're awaiting city council. And this is the first you're hearing about it. So the timing that you guys need, if you need us to come back and go through the project further, we can happy to do that. But that's what he's waiting for.
Well, and I appreciate all the work. I know your team does good work. A lot of this funding is, we saw some was ARPA funding, some was
gap funding.
CBDG, I think, or no? Any of this grant funding from this HUD?
So we have some home-funded down payment assistance programs from HUD.
And then there's part of the GEO bond, the housing portion of the 12 million is included in this, right? So the reason I ask if how critical it is between today and 7 more days, I know this was something that the mayor was kind of passionate about. As Mayor Pro Tem, you stated earlier, one of the priorities was for home ownership, but in that 12 million for the housing, there was kind of 3 programs. One was for home buyer assistance, one was for aging in place, and the other was for kind of that gap financing. So and as my colleague Jones and others have stated too, I think everybody in the room would agree that the home ownership is important, but also just housing, affordable housing, attainable housing in general. So that's why that gap funding for the affordable housing rentals or apartment rentals is a key component. I just don't know, getting through the budget thing portion we had before lunch and then getting this and having 20% of council with Councilmember McMillan and the mayor not being here, I just, as personally, one person, think it'd be better to discuss this when all of council's present, maybe next week.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Ferguson.
Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My question is on the homeowner rehab preservation cases, emergency repairs. Is this the one that's being done through Urban Ministries?
Our community development block grant funded program is through Urban Ministries. We would look for a nonprofit partner to do this, but one of the things I'm really interested in is them bringing leverage and not us being 100% of the funding, so that I can hopefully make that 50 to 55 number 75, 80, 90 households. So if they can bring other funding sources to the table as well. And so that's what I'm really interested in. Councilmember Jones suggested that we talk to the older Council on Aging, so we're reaching out to talk to them a little bit as well. I do think Fayetteville Urban Ministry has done an amazing job for 25 years. They would be looked at for this, but I do also want to see if we can get a bigger bang for our buck.
So you're saying that it could be Urban Ministries and in addition another organization, or both? Or one or the other?
It could be more than one, right? Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, because the amount comes out to about $37,000 per home.
Yeah, well,
is that?
So I was roughly doing about $30,000 per home, and then you got project management, people putting bids out, things like that. So the program that we run with Fayetteville Urban Ministry right now is at 25. But what we end up finding is that they tear out sheetrock in a wall, and electrical work needs to be done. They go to fix a roof, and there's water damage to the floor beneath the roof. Things pop up, and so we have a program in place that prioritizes public the health and safety of the inhabitants, and then structural issues, and then functional, and then if they were in a perfect scenario able to do all of that and they still had budget left in that 25, they could do cosmetic upgrades. Mm-hmm. But usually they don't get to the cosmetic. Right? So
it's generally around $30,000 to $35,000
once you factor
per
in
home?
like administration, project management, all of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Davis.
That was old. I'm sorry. That was an old light.
Okay, Council. Direction. I'm sorry, Councilmember Jones.
You're fine. Thank you, Mayor Pro. Last question in regards to the Rose Hill Road project. I know you said time is of the essence. We have to spend the $750K before December. What does that timeline look like for approval for the 422 in order for everything to occur to have that money expensed? I know we said we wanted to push it down a little bit, but realistic, what does that time frame look like as far as any decision on that 422 in order for us to still maximize that 750 ARPA for that particular project?
So there's budget, finance, and legal involved in that question.
Right.
I think based on my experience and not consulting with any of them, that we're talking about 30 days before we bring actions back to council to say, approve these things and go forth. That would probably be the quickest that we would reasonably see that turnaround.
Okay, and what I was getting at, just making sure that you all had time, if it was council's pleasure to do that, do the 422, the time frame you all would need to do whatever processes you needed to make sure, again, that we don't miss out in spending that $750K. Because, again, things may occur, so that's why I'm looking at all of that. So thank you.
So, Mayor Pro Tem,
Councilman Hondros.
to piggyback on what Councilman Jones just said, I'll make a motion. I move that we allocate the 422-125 to Kingdom CDC Rose Hill Infrastructure Gap, and then table the other items till next Thursday.
I would second that.
It has been motioned and properly seconded by Councilwoman Green. Question on the motion?
Yeah, question. Is that the way, help me, council member, if the, I didn't know if it was backwards, and let me tell you what I mean. If the 750 was a part of our ARPA funding already, okay, to be allocated for whatever we're doing within the rental housing part, and it's already been allocated for us to use for that matter, wouldn't it be, not just me trying to understand it, wouldn't it be the other way around, that the 750 that we would allocate to be approved and then come back on the 422-125?
That's an excellent question. I think, Director Colley, correct me if I'm wrong, I think council already approved the 750 of ARPA, and we need an additional 422. So by this motion, we would be doing that. Right? So if we look at the,
So we're not making any.
we're adding the
We're done with
422 to the 750.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just has to be spent by December,
Thanks for the
I
clarity.
believe.
Thanks for the clarity.
And where's the 422 coming from again?
The
Bond.
general
The
obligation
housing.
bond.
Geo bond.
It's gonna come out of the GO bond, out of the 12 million.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Dr. Hewitt?
Yeah, we also, given that the timing is, as Councilmember Green said, at the end of the year, and confirming when we come back on next Thursday, we'll reconfirm about expensing the money, not just allocating the money, and see if we can't work with Kingdom to make sure that that is doable. We've been so good on making sure we get all of the ARPA money out the door, and this is a holdover, but he ran into, as you know, significant design and cost overruns and a whole bunch of other issues, but it's still a very viable project. And so,
That's just the 750. The 422 doesn't have to be spent by it.
well, if he can't use the 750, if he loses that, then the 422 won't help him either.
Wow.
He's 422 short of his infrastructure contract.
Gotcha.
Right. Now, one more thing, one more
Yes, sir.
question before we vote. So, on the 422,000, were we also requesting a line-by-line item that equaled up to that amount? Was that a part of what you were bringing back?
I can.
Did I not hear that? You may not have used the word line by line, but so we would know exactly where that 422 was, how it was being spent and what it was used for?
We absolutely can. We can bring back the total project budget. And then just to remind council, at the end of construction of these 15 homes, I will get a certified cost statement by a third party that says what he spent the money on.
All right, I'm ready to vote.
Well, I have another question since you brought that up. And I look at the first line, it says allocated framework, but then we just got finished saying it has to be dispersed by the end, not just allocated.
So our American Rescue Plan dollars have to be expended by the end of this calendar year, right? These funds have a timeline on it of a couple of years out from now.
I got that, but you
Right,
said
yeah.
the 750 ain't gonna do no good if he don't get the 422.
That's correct, yeah.
So wouldn't the same apply? That it has to be dispersed and not just allocated? Since it's all gonna be used together for the infrastructure part?
Yes, sir. So in 30 days, give or take, we would bring back to council appropriation of this funding from the bond, a agreement to execute with the developer.
The
and
1.2.
then- And then he would go.
Gotcha,
Well, he's already got the 750, so this would be just adding to that. Yeah.
gotcha. Any other questions on the motion? Ready for the vote? Let's use your sure systems. Who we missing? One more? Councilmember Harris?
The mayor said I had his too.
All right, that is unanimous. All right, can we get a motion to adjourn? Great job, everyone. Until the next meeting.